Maybe the sugar circulating in her brain had jogged her memory.
Should you fail to withdraw, you are no longer my junior and I am no longer your senior.
I had been told to withdraw many times in the past, and on those occasions had sometimes withdrawn and sometimes hadn't, but the message had never been presented in such a threatening manner. I even felt slightly betrayed to discover that she was the kind of person who'd say such a thing foolishly, shamefully, even though I talk about how all-important doubt and suspicion are, somewhere deep down. In the heart that must be somewhere inside me, I trusted Gain-senpai. I thought she wasn't the kind of person who went to any lengths to push her agenda, and that whatever she might say, she respected personal freedom. And yet, there was a lesson to take home from this. But what was it?
What'll you do, big brother Kaiki?
Ononoki addressed me thusly again, but it seemed less like a slip of the tongue due to my injunctions slipping her mind than her own way of being considerate, a concession, or something like that. Or was she giving me, contrarian that I am, a nudge in the right direction, so I wouldn't make the wrong decision? A reminder, making certain I understood that I belonged to their side. I considered it. I had already considered it, but this time, I considered it more deeply. I recalled Senjogahara's face from the night before, puffy from crying, and recalled her words of gratitude, directed at none other than me. Then I considered my relationship with Gain-senpai, and my stake in all this. I recalled the figure that had been indicated, 3 million yen. Ononoki,
I said. This time it didn't take 30 minutes.
Sure, I'll withdraw. Naturally, I had no intention of withdrawing, and after taking the 3 million from Ononoki, I headed directly to Kitashirahebi Shrine. Right off the bat, the money covered the costs of securing the attentions of my hostess. I mean the deity, the alms required to draw her out of the shrine. I was happy not to have to worry about my Sengoku pilgrimage anymore. At 10,000 yen a day, I could make 300 visits. Even if I went to the shrine every day until graduation, more than half the money would be left over, and I was ecstatic to have all my travel and accommodation expenses taken care of. True, the price was making an enemy of Gain-senpai, but upon consideration she was already something of an enemy, so in fact I was somewhat relieved that the onerous cord was finally cut. Getting a severance package to boot? Hip hip hooray. Were things going a little too well for me?
I felt like a new man as I ascended the mountain and worshipped at the shrine, and by worshipped I mean put a 10,000 yen note into the offertory box.
Here's Nadeko.
The serpent god appeared in exactly the same way she had the day before. It reminded me of a piggy bank they used to sell at Tokyu Hands.
Ah, Mr. Kaiki, you came.
She greeted.
Well, I am your very first believer, after all. I'd taken a shine to the ridiculous turn of phrase, and was keeping it going for a second day. Nadeko Sengoku looked pleased. How starved was she for believers. But at the same time, I felt like it hadn't quite done the trick. So I added, the truth is, there's something I want desperately, so I've decided to make a 100-day pilgrimage to this shrine. I'll come every day until my wish is granted.
100-day pilgrimage, huh? Nadeko might have done one of those before, or not.
She cocked her head along with the vague pronouncement.
Probably it wasn't that her memory was vague. It just didn't matter to her. Maybe she'd made an attempt but hadn't had the will to keep it up.
So, what's your wish, Mr. Kaiki? Is it something Nadeko can grant for you?
It's a little hard to sum up. She was so lacking in majesty that I lost track of the fact that she was supposed to be the object of my pilgrimage. But if I was going to make a 100-day commitment, sooner or later I needed to tell her what my as-yet non-existent wish was. It seemed that for the first time in my life, or maybe not, but anyway, for the first time I could recall, I'd be praying to a god.
Hard to sum up? Like romantic stuff? That kind of thing? At your age, Mr. Kaiki, does it mean you're hoping to get married?
Not a chance. I could feel my tone getting overly serious. I had to wonder why I was being so vehement about it, but couldn't stop myself from continuing. Have you ever played a game called Dragon Quest?
Played? No, but Nadeko's heard of it.
Then maybe you'll understand. It's an RPG where you save up gold pieces on your way to beating a demon lord.
Okay.
But if you get killed by a monster, you lose half the gold you worked so hard to save up.
Right.
When you get married, the same thing happens. So marriage is the same as death.
Then, how about marrying someone who's richer than you?
You don't get it, do you? I don't want to lose any of my own money. It's not about gaining more from the other person than I would lose. My voice was taking on a fevered tone, so regaining some of my composure, I wrapped things up. Anyway, I'm not interested in getting married. It's impossible to sum up in a few words, like I said. If I have to, though, let's say commercial prosperity.
Commercial prosper.
Nadeko Sengoku repeated my words back to me as though she was struggling with the spelling.
That be one thing. But if she didn't know what the words meant, we were in real trouble.
What's your job then, Mr. Kaiki?
That's also a little hard to sum up. Actually, it was easy. All you needed was one word: swindler. But telling her that would ruin my plan. She may have forgotten the name Deishū Kaiki, but I was pretty sure she remembered falling victim to a charm because of a swindler. Maybe she'd forgotten, but putting it to the test was too dangerous. I'll be making 100 visits, 98 more to be precise. So there's no hurry. I'll explain it little by little.
Okay, sounds good.
Even Nadeko Sengoku seemed to find this a little suspicious, but apparently the prospect of 98 more visits won out, and she was all smiles. Was she the type where negative emotion gets erased as soon as a positive emotion comes along? I envy how simple life must be for such a person. Well, she was no longer a person, and as a human she must have been much more negative. But now, at last.
Tell me about yourself, Mr. Kaiki, a little bit at a time. Nadeko will listen, because that's what gods do.
She could quit hopping on the god thing. Maybe she was just excited because she was new at it. Oh, was it not being human anymore that excited her, that she wanted to emphasize? Either was fine by me, but both surpassed my comprehension.
Okay, for today, just teach Nadeko some more cat's cradle. Like you promised, Nadeko pretty much mastered all the tricks from yesterday.
Nadeko Sengoku came down from the main hall, leapt over the offertory box in a single bound, and landed beside me, quite the athlete and tomboy.
Had she been like that as a human being, leaping over the offertory box, a receptacle for cash, was nothing short of blasphemous. Then again, she'd removed the 10,000 yen note I had tossed in there, and if it was empty, it was probably the god's prerogative to jump over it or do anything else she damn well pleased. Right, cat's cradle.
I nodded, inwardly preening.
My practice had made perfect. I could reproduce all these moves flawlessly in my mind. The book itself I had hidden, but ultimately given to that Shikigami girl as a present. I hadn't yet memorized the whole thing, but was feeling generous. The evidence was gone. There was no danger that my pretense would come to light. Sure, get out the cat's cradle I gave you yesterday. By which I meant the impromptu loop of string I'd made.
Oh, that. Nadeko played with it so much it broke.
Nadeko Sengoku reported, without a moment's hesitation, the overnight destruction of my gift.
I wasn't even sure where the piece of string had come from, so it wouldn't be very mature of me to get mad. But what to do? If only I'd stopped somewhere and bought a proper cat's cradle, but I'd come straight to the shrine from Starbucks. Not that I knew how a proper one would be better.
So Nadeko's been practicing with this instead?
She said, producing a loop of string. She made a new one with some string that was lying around? ? Great, then there's no problem, I thought, but there was a big problem. The loop Sengoku produced wasn't made of just any piece of string, but from a white snake presumably plucked from her own head. The slender serpent was holding its own tail in its mouth like a mini Ouroboros. And Nadeko Sengoku was handing this horrifying cat's cradle to me with a big smile on her face.
Okay, Mr. Kaiki, do it, do it.
I felt an urgent need to reprogram my mental simulator. I was ashamed at my own lack of foresight for coming this far without ever expecting to perform cat's cradle with a snake, and I needed to adjust my understanding of Nadeko Sengoku. The girl wasn't just stupid, she was also crazy. She was out of her feeble little mind.
It wasn't until well after I descended the mountain, having continued this giggling romp with the stupid, crazy, out of her feeble little mind Nadeko Sengoku until evening came, that I noticed I was being tailed. The instant I noticed, my legs unconsciously began to carry me away from the station. You could put it down to the fact that I'm a battle-worn veteran, or a sly old fox, or to the muscle memory of evasive action taken in the past.
I'd often pretend to be the thrill-seeking, self-destructive type, but perhaps my instincts prefer safety. So is Deishū Kaiki just another human being? Does that disappoint you? Well, I'm into that version of myself. I think it's cute, and while I can't speak for Nadeko Sengoku, to me cute is a compliment.
Without looking back, I casually, and now consciously, upped my pace. The ground was covered in snow, so I nearly slipped. Snow country makes it pretty easy to tail someone. When you think about it, the snow creates clear footprints, deadens sound, and even light precipitation will completely mask the form of the person tailing you. Of course, having noticed that I was being followed, I could exploit corners and blind spots to discover the identity of my tail. If I whirled around and threw down my flat-out adult dash, I might even catch the person, but I also might not. And if I failed, I'd only have succeeded in revealing that I was onto them.
In which case, he or she or they would adopt a new strategy, one that I wouldn't catch on to so easily, and that would spell trouble. So I decided to leave it alone. I wouldn't put an ounce of effort into discovering the identity of the person following me. I'm not trying to sound sage, but not expending effort is actually quite easy. Easier than expending effort anyway.
I chose a likely spot to hail a cab and asked to be taken to the station rather than to my hotel. Not the station nearest my hotel, but one stop down the line. Whoever the person tailing me might be, I didn't think they'd follow me in another taxi at this stage, but I was erring on the side of caution. It'd be one thing in a big city like Tokyo or Osaka, but a car chase in this now Thirsville town might be fun. As I predicted though, no vehicle followed my taxi.
They seem to have given up too easily. Maybe they'd cut it short for the day, or maybe the little shadow play didn't mean anything, and they were already staking out my hotel. At this point, I finally wondered who it might be. Too many possibilities occurred to me. There were too many people who bore me ill will, and the truth is, I had absolutely no clue, a fact that was only compounded by being where I was. At the same time, I muttered, the most likely possibility was, naturally, some peon of Gain Senpai's, though there was no need to call her senpai anymore. I may have pulled the wool over Ononoki's eyes, but I had no illusions about doing the same to Gain Senpai. Once she discovered my betrayal, no, my beautiful decision not to withdraw for the sake of that darling child, she would put me under surveillance. Ononoki, however, had said that she had no means of contacting Gain Senpai, in which case Gain Senpai didn't know what I was up to. This was her, though, so there was a strong possibility that, anticipating my duplicity, she'd put additional people besides Ononoki in place to watch me. But, after considering the matter for a while, I decided I didn't have to worry. I couldn't rule it out completely, of course, but based on my experience of her in the years since we were at school together, Gain Senpai herself had already fully withdrawn from the matter at hand. And withdrawing for her meant withdrawing for good whatever I might do to come in and muck up her beautiful handiwork. She wouldn't personally set foot in the town again. So my decision not to worry didn't stem from the remoteness of the possibility, but purely from the idea that I was good as long as Gain Senpai herself didn't show up. Unless it was Yuzuru or Meme, I was good. I could even set a trap for Gain Senpai by manipulating her peons. Well, Whether or not I'd actually go that far, it seemed prudent to find out what the hell she'd been up to in this town a few months back. It might be important for my work going forward. Then I considered who the most likely candidate would be if the person tailing me wasn't sent by Game-senpai, one of the middle schoolers who bore me a grudge. Normally I would have said yes, but if that were the case, why would they go to the trouble of tailing me? They'd just resort to some violent action and smash me in the back of the head without warning, though I could also imagine why they might not.
Are you vacationing here, sir?
Sure, kind of. More of a business trip, really. Work has provided me with an opportunity to come here.
Work, huh? I knew it. You've got kind of an urban feel about you, sir, so I thought that might be the case.
I wasn't sure if urban was a compliment, but I was pretty sure it wasn't an insult at least, so I acknowledged it with a thanks.
So, what do you think of the place?
I'm enjoying myself. It's a real thrill ride.
I didn't end up boarding a train at the station where the taxi dropped me off, nor did I go back to my hotel. I did an immediate about-face and returned to the town. I wasn't being vigilant, I had completely given up worrying about that. As long as they didn't bother me directly, they were harmless, so I opted to just forget about it. No harm, no foul, that's the kind of guy I am.
There was something else that concerned me more. The fact that Nadeko Sengoku was so broken. Ultimately, that was her right. Whether she was stupid crazy or smart crazy, but something about her was incongruous and just felt off balance. Maybe getting stuck doing cat's cradle with a snake had rattled me more thoroughly than I'd expected. But you should have seen the smile on Nadeko Sengoku's face when she innocently manipulated that snake into the shape of a broom, just like I had taught her, thankfully. I hadn't been so rattled that I forgot how to make the shapes I had memorized. Either way, if she was mentally unstable, I had to stabilize her.
In aid of which, I visited the Sengoku residence again. This time, however, I had no intention of calling her parents on the intercom and coming in through the front door. There was nothing more I needed to hear from them, so I had no interest in speaking to them again. Good, law-abiding citizens.
Well, maybe I wasn't going to get away with literally never speaking another word to them. I called the Sengokuses on my cell phone from right outside their house. It wasn't so far from Araragi's, by the way, so I was on constant lookout. I couldn't let my vigilance lapse entirely with regard to being tailed. But in that neighborhood, a chance encounter with Araragi or his little sister Karen was of much greater concern. It was her father who answered the phone. Sengoku speaking.
I unleashed my vaunted gift of gab on him. I had found a clue regarding their missing daughter. Something new had come to light when I compared it with the book I'd taken home from the bedroom they'd been kind enough to let me examine. It wasn't the kind of thing we could discuss over the phone, and I wanted to hear their thoughts on the matter, so could he and his wife come meet me. That was how I played it, circuitous, which is to say reserved, yet carefully calibrated to make it impossible to refuse.
The time being what it was, around 9 o'clock at night. Nadeko Sengoku's father wasn't thrilled, but ultimately he acceded to my request. He was honestly worried about his missing daughter after all.
After hanging up, I watched and waited, and at last a car carrying Mr. and Mrs. Sengoku left the garage and drove away into the night. Making sure they were gone, I entered the grounds. Cautiously. Yes, I was breaking and entering, but it's a little late to be bringing that up now. I ignored the front door and went around to the back. I very much doubted that the front door was unlocked, and even if it were, I wasn't going to go in that way. It was the second-floor windows I was interested in. I located the window of Nadeko Sengo's room, more or less right away. I took a few steps back, just enough to give myself a running start, then took off. The second floor of an average home isn't high enough to require a ladder or rope. I ran up the vertical wall with my leather shoes and grabbed the frame, then used a bit of rock-climbing prowess to make it the rest of the way. Opening the window, I climbed inside.
I had unlocked it the day before, under the guise of opening and shutting the curtains, and fortunately it did the trick. I say fortunately, but it wasn't a question of chance. It was a premeditated crime. That said, I hadn't necessarily been sure I'd need to return to her room. Unlocking the window was simply a precautionary measure I'd taken naturally. There were a number of others, but something had bugged me enough that I'd figured it might be worth a return visit. The closet. The closet that Sengoku's parents had absolutely not opened, because They'd been told absolutely not to. I had come to open it. That was why I'd set a rendezvous with her parents and gotten them out of the house. A trick I could only use once. It would irreparably damage Mr. and Mrs. Sengoku's impression of me. But so be it. What was done was done. If you let yourself worry about everything, you'll never accomplish anything.
Now that I had the opportunity, I left the closet for last, and in the gloom, or rather pitch darkness, I made the thorough search I'd been prevented from conducting by her parents' watchful eyes. Unfortunately, however, this prefatory work yielded nothing. Even rummaging through her underwear drawer didn't come up anything interesting. I'd hoped for a secret diary. Thinking that they might hold some promise, I flipped through the pages of the notebook sitting atop her desk. The doodle she made during class might provide some insight into her personality. Apparently she wasn't one for taking notes during class. When else would she? And the pages were almost entirely blank.
Not into studying. Nadeko Sengoku. I hadn't been such a great student myself. But this girl was a little extreme. I guess that was an insight into her personality, revealed by those blank notebooks. Now, then, time for the main event. I'd set the meeting a bit on the late side. On top of which I'd said something like, I must apologize in advance. I might be a little late, so I probably had about another hour to continue my search. But I was still in someone else's home, an unfamiliar habitat. Definitely no need to overstay my welcome.
I reached for the closet door, a slight resistance. It seemed to be locked.
Now it all made sense. Her parents couldn't open the closet because it was locked. Nope, that explained exactly nothing. While there was a lock, it was simply the kind where you can insert a 10-yen coin and turn the handle. A lock not worthy of the name. Just a modest assertion that this is a private space, so no peeking. Nothing more than a reminder to the forgetful. They say that locks only protect us from the righteous, and this of all locks definitely appealed to people's better natures. Naturally, I rejected the appeal, not having anything resembling a better nature. Case dismissed. This court is adjourned.
I felt around in my pocket for some coins. It held the change from when I had bought Ononoki's chocolate chunk scone and fishing out a 10-yen coin. I opened the lock on the closet door. Inside was the decomposing corpse of a middle-aged man who'd been chainsawed into pieces. Not bloody likely on first glance, a vista of not bloody anything opened before me. It held clothes hanging on hangers, but that wasn't all. Or rather, the clothes were just camouflage, and behind them...
What the hell?
I exited the Sengoku residence and, once I was at some remove, I called Nadeko Sengoku's father and told him that I had been held up and wasn't going to be able to make it. He was an adult, so he didn't let his displeasure show, but it was clear that he'd taken offense. I was prepared for this eventuality, but they weren't going to be as easy to communicate with as they had been up to that point. Then again, who knows when they might notice that their daughter's room's window had been unlocked. Communicating with them would get more and more dicey as time went on. I would have had to search that closet in the next day or two. In any case.
In that sense, I had made the right call. But in the end, I'd come up empty-handed. That stuff didn't tell me anything. All it did was put me in a bad mood. But I'm always in a bad mood. It's by no means an exaggeration to say that I'm in a bad mood pretty much any time I'm not looking at money. No big deal. I'd forget about it more or less right away.
I skipped the taxi ride this time, instead heading to the station on foot, where I got on the train and returned to my hotel. Well, strictly speaking, I took a small detour.
Why I did this I can't rightly say, and in retrospect it seems like an utterly foolish choice. But I went out of my way to walk by the Araragi residence on my way to the station. The lights were on, and I just waltzed on by, giving the place the side eye without saying or doing anything more. I did happen to glance up at the second floor, but I didn't know which. Rooms belonged to Araragi or his sisters, so it was pointless. For all I knew, their rooms might have been on the ground level. Kids' rooms aren't necessarily on the second floor. Only as I glanced at the house, the lights still on inside it, I thought, seems like he's doing some exam prep. This was a total shot in the dark, too. A room with a light on late at night by no means meant that it was Araragi's or that he was studying. Maybe he was up playing an FPS or something.
Well, whether it was good luck or nothing out of the ordinary, I safely walked past the Araragi residence and carried on to the station.
How pissed off Senjogahara would be if she found out. I absolutely had to keep it secret from her. But at the same time, I felt like calling her right there. And confessing. Basically, I wasn't just in a bad mood, I was annoyed. I was pissed off that I had come up empty-handed. And since I didn't have anyone to take it out on, I was exposing myself to danger as a means of relieving my stress, I suppose. Hilarious. What a delicate flower I am. Sure, I probably only indulge my self-destructive behavior and urges because I have unshakable confidence in my ability to survive any crisis in which I might find myself. So my hubris is nothing to sneeze at either. Otherwise I couldn't flout Gain Senpai's command like that. Quite right.
Pondering these questions, I got back to the hotel and opened the door to my room only to find a letter lying on the floor inside my locked room, over by the bathroom.
A letter?
A white envelope, anyway. I locked the door behind me, then slowly, cautiously approached the envelope and picked it up. It didn't seem to be a mail bomb. Having confirmed this, no, even before I did, as soon as I picked it up, in fact, I got sick of being cautious and I tore the envelope open.
Withdraw was the entirety of the message on the sheet of paper and neatly folded into 3. It was written by hand, not typed, but the penmanship gave absolutely no sense of the author, who must have intentionally modified his or her handwriting. Thus, I had no clue who'd written the message, though it had to be someone who wanted me to withdraw.
I scrutinized the back of the sheet as well as the inside of the envelope, and once I had confirmed that the message was only that single word, I carefully returned the sheet to the envelope, carefully tore it into pieces and carefully threw it in the wastebasket. Then, deciding that throwing it in the wastebasket wasn't enough, I flushed it down the toilet. Since I was already in the bathroom, I proceeded to take a shower.
I'm a guy that loves a hot shower, but this time I opted for a cold one. It was the middle of winter, so there was some danger of catching a cold. But I really needed a cool head at the moment.
I considered the situation as my whole body slowly turned blue. How many people knew that I was staying at the hotel? Did Senjogahara know? I had called her out to the station the night before, and perhaps she had deduced the general area I was in, but it's not like this was the only hotel. There was no way she could have guessed. I was staying at this one in particular. Nor would she tell me to withdraw. That would be far too illogical for someone as forthright as Senjogahara, when she had commissioned me for the job. In bed or rest. Whoever had been tailing me popped into my head. Now that I thought about it, it might have been a case of nerves, my mind playing tricks on me. I had felt anxious about my hotel being watched, which wasn't impossible. Perhaps I'd been under surveillance all along, and it had taken me until now to finally notice. By enlisting the aid of someone supernatural like Ononoki, Gaien Senpai could probably find out where I was without going to the trouble of tailing or monitoring. The Shikigami always shows up like that, so I hadn't been overly concerned, but when you get right down to it, dropping in while I was reading in a Starbucks was suspiciously abrupt. Even if she could pin down my location, though, that'd be it. No one could place a letter, leave that message in a locked hotel room. It would require a certain amount of physical destruction, even if it was Ononoki. I had just broken into the Sengoku home, so it's not like that's such a big thing. But my room was on one of the upper stories of a high-rise. Whoever it was definitely couldn't get in through the window. It was fixed and didn't even open. So who left the letter in my room, and how? My enemy couldn't possibly have an accomplice inside the hotel. Enemy? What enemy? Was it my current foe, the adolescent god?
Maybe I'm up against some sort of powerful organization,
I said, experimentally, figured I might as well. Or I was just poaching Ononoki's idiotic comment about a secret society. I actually felt like I might freeze solid, so I adjusted the temperature of the shower and warmed myself back up. Once I was warm enough, I toweled off and left the bathroom, then picked up my cell phone.
For a second I was worried that it might be bugged. But judging that I was worrying too much, I went ahead and called Senjogahara. Not to confess that I'd strolled by the Araragi place earlier, of course.
Are you lonely or something, Kaiki? You can't keep calling me like this, night after night.
Senjogahara, there's something I want to ask you.
What is it this time? I wore blue underwear today.
She sounded sleepy, that is, it seemed like she was still half asleep. I was kind of surprised. I wouldn't have thought the girl was ever anything less than fully alert. Always taut and tightly wound, like the string of a bass.
Wake up! Senjogahara.
I'm awake. Rhubarb,
Don't give me that rhubarb shit.
said LL.
That's not half asleep. That's asleep.
What do you want? Want me to come out again? Fine, I'll go anywhere you like. Want to meet at the same Mr. D's as last time?
No, I don't need you to come meet me today. Worrying about my phone being bugged was excessive, but meeting in person might still be dangerous. If they'd found out where I was staying, they couldn't possibly not know about Senjogahara, my client, but as a precaution, it seemed best to avoid direct contact. It's not that. I just need to ask you something.
What? About our business?
What else would you and I have to talk about?
Fair enough.
Senjogahara, finally seeming ready to listen in earnest, said, I'm gonna go splash some water on my face, hang on a sec, and put down the phone. After a little while she returned and asked, so what's the deal? Fully present. Incredible. The alacrity with which she switched gears was almost unbelievable.
I thought you already had a game plan?
Yeah, that's all set. And things are going swimmingly with Nadeko Sengoku. I already had faith, and seeing her today only deepened my conviction. I realized that I had made it sound as if I really was a believer. The irony being that neither faith, conviction, nor belief were words that had any bearing on my life. So, no problem on that front. But something else has come up, which is why I need to ask you something. I thought it best not to mention Gaien Senpai or Ononoki yet. It'd probably just make her needlessly anxious.
Fire away.
Man, was she dauntless, switching gears so fast. It was almost as if she had only been pretending to be half asleep. You? Oh, I guess you and Araragi? And maybe Shinobu or Shino? And this Hanekawa? Anyway, in the course of trying to resolve this problem with Nadeko Sengoku, in other words, before you came to me for help, did anybody try to interfere? Interfere or give you a warning, anything like that? For instance, did you receive a letter telling you to withdraw?
Senjogahara was silent for a while, seemingly lost in thought, and then she probed, did something happen? She seemed to be telling me to disclose my purpose if I wanted her to reply. Well, I suppose that was only natural from her perspective. In fact, I would have been taken aback if she didn't have any such misgivings, if she'd answered such a specific question with a simple yes or no. I told Senjogahara about the day's events, which doubled as a progress report. Not everything, naturally. I had to cover up the breaking and entering, for instance, even if it had been conducted in the course of the job. If I let that slip, Senjogahara would become an accomplice after the fact. It was purely a matter of courtesy as a swindler to claim sole responsibility for any illegal behavior. This may be the age of accountability, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea to disclose absolutely everything. Even user-friendly days and friends. The part about Ononoki and Gaien Senpai, however, I had no choice but to mention at this point, though I'd have preferred to hold off on it or keep it hidden altogether as well.
Miss Gaien, huh?
Apparently she was in your town a while back. Did you happen to meet her?
No, I didn't, but Araragi and Miss Hanekawa each dealt with her. Regarding different things. Actually, Nadeko Sengoku became a god in the first place because of Miss Gaien's talisman, but you already knew that, didn't you, Kaiki?
Yeah, so you did too. I was about to criticize her for withholding a crucial bit of info, but then I was the one who hadn't let her tell me about the situation, because I didn't want her feelings to muddy the waters. In which case, maybe on the other end of the line she was breathing a sigh of relief that I'd gotten that far. Did Gaien Senpai tell them what she told me? Did she tell Araragi and Hanekawa to withdraw?
Not Araragi. How could she? That'd be like saying, give in and let yourself be killed. Even a kindergartner knows that's an unreasonable demand.
Very true. Gaien Senpai probably thought that Araragi and Senjogahara should die, should be killed, if it served the balance of things, but she'd never say it to their faces.
But when Miss Hanekawa met her, Miss Gaien apparently said something unpleasant, so maybe she did to Araragi too. Said something unpleasant, I mean. Still, it doesn't seem like she demanded Miss Hanekawa do anything. More like a friendly warning.
Sounds about right. She didn't try to force my hand either. Though she did disown me. But if that was the case, maybe I needed to speak to this friend of Senjogahara's, this Hanekawa, to hear what she had to say. It's just that I had a premonition that I'd absolutely regret meeting her. Be that as it may, I had only heard about Gain-senpai's aims through Ononoki, a filter so fine it might as well be a plank of wood, and seriously hadn't a clue as to her true intentions. Hanekawa, on the other hand, received her warning straight from the horse's mouth, so maybe she'd been able to discern something. Something. What something? What would that something need to be to satisfy me?
Kaiki, if you want to hear what Miss Hanekawa has to say.
Well, I'd thought Senjogahara was pathologically opposed to me interacting with any of her friends or family, but here she was, offering to introduce me to Hanekawa. But that wasn't the case.
You should give up on that idea right now. Of course, being the contrarian that you are, I imagine you'll try to meet her behind my back, but that's going to be impossible. She's overseas at the moment.
Overseas, looking for Oshino. Now that you mentioned it, I remembered her saying something about that when we talked back on the first. That Hanekawa was abroad searching for Oshino but hadn't found him. Or whatever, though, if I may, as someone who's known the guy forever, she was barking up the wrong tree. Oshino is a Japan-only vagabond. The subject of his research, that is to say, the field of his fieldwork, never extends beyond our borders. Unless his worldview changed considerably, he wouldn't go overseas to begin with. He wouldn't be able to obtain a passport, same as me, even if she did find him overseas. Bringing him back would be no easy task. Another one for futile efforts, huh? This Hanekawa person.
Maybe. You might be right. Futile. But that kind of dedication, doing everything she can in spite of it all, is just like her, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it. I agreed indifferently. That kind of dedication was just like her. I didn't even know this Hanekawa.
Well, she'd been planning all along to take a trip around the world after graduation, so she just laughed it off as location scouting. Not that that makes me feel any better. She must have finished location scouting by the end of last year.
A trip around the entire world, that's quite an undertaking.
Some people say it's Mr. Oshino's influence.
Sounds like the student has surpassed the teacher. What a fearsome girl. And she was still only in high school. But given the circumstances, it wasn't going to be possible to get Hanekawa's story, at least not right away. We could probably get in touch via phone or email, but I doubted I could get the whole story out of someone I'd never met. When is she coming back?
I have no idea.
You must have some idea, I thought. They must be keeping touch by email or phone, so regardless of where Hanekawa was, Senjogahara simply didn't want to introduce us. Now that's friendship. While it might be unrelated, if she put Hanekawa and me in touch with each other, I might get a better sense of what was going on in Gain-senpai's mind, and the chances of Senjogahara's life being saved might well increase. Yet even so, theirs was an odd relationship. Well, so be it. I cut short that discussion. I wasn't going to waste any more time making Senjogahara tell me how she had no intention of telling me. I had to draw the line somewhere. At any rate, Gain-senpai seems to be afraid that I might fail and not fulfill your commission to deceive Nadeko Sengoku, which is, of course, unthinkable.
In that case, wouldn't Araragi and I just get killed, like we were going to all along? As far as Miss Gain is concerned, that was the plan.
No, I think she's afraid Nadeko Sengoku will be enraged by my attempt to deceive her. It's a little different from Araragi going up there, or putting up a fight. Deception is, I mean.
Well, I guess I can see that. Senjogahara didn't seem particularly convinced, but she assented nonetheless. Then, I assume in service of deepening her own imperfect grasp of the situation, she tried an analogy.
In other words, Kind of like how confessing your love and getting flat out rejected is one thing, but confessing your love and getting rejected with a lie like, I have a girlfriend, is unbearable.
Romance analogies didn't mean anything to me, but I went ahead and answered. Right, exactly. If it worked for Senjogahara, it was good enough for me.
She lapsed into a sullen silence as if she'd read my mind before bringing the conversation back around.
So according to what you said, Miss Gain offered you 3 million yen to withdraw, right? Why did you refuse? In other words, why didn't you withdraw at that point?
What would you rather I had?
It's not that, it's just not knowing your intentions makes me anxious.
The woman could say the most horrible things without batting an eyelash, not that I didn't understand where she was coming from.
Maybe you figured out some clever way to wangle more than 3 million out of this?
I didn't dignify that with a response.
I'm sorry. That was a horrible thing to say.
What a pushover.
Seriously though, how come? I'm grateful that you're not giving up on the job, of course, but you see why it makes me anxious.
I don't need to figure out a way to wangle more than 3 million yen out of this, because I already did. 100,000 plus 3 million equals 3,100,000. More than 3 million yen.
I guess you're right.
I get the same amount whether I finish the job or not. So I'll see it through. My logic couldn't be more simple.
If the amount is going to be the same, don't people usually call it a day?
That's the logic of a child. Adults don't abandon their work just like that. My remark was meant to make me sound cool, but I felt miffed that opinions remain generally divided over whether swindling actually constitutes work.
Don't treat me like a kid.
Anyway, don't worry about Gan-senpai. She won't be an issue. She's not the type to use force, even if I take her 3 million yen and don't withdraw. She might put me under surveillance, but I doubt she'll bring her strength to bear on actively obstructing my deception. I said. The person who'd been tailing me in the forefront of my mind.
Really? You aren't just telling yourself that because you want to believe that your senpai is tolerant and broad-minded. She's all set to ruthlessly, cold-bloodedly stand by and watch as Araragi and I, and his lowly slave, are murdered.
I don't need you to tell me that Guyan-senpai isn't as tolerant and broad-minded as I want her to be. Come on, we're talking about someone who'd disown her own adorable junior over a little thing like, worst-case scenario, one measly town going up in smoke.
Well,
It seemed as though Senjogahara was about to say something. Probably something like, she doesn't need an excuse to disown a junior like you, but I imagine she realized it was a horrible thing to say because she didn't finish her sentence. Though maybe that's just my persecution complex speaking. In other words, maybe Deishū Kaiki was more hurt by Gan-senpai's threat of disavowal than I was admitting. If so, I was somewhat pleased at having discovered a heretofore unknown side of myself.
well, I only know this Gain person from what other people have told me, so I'll just have to take your word for it. So she won't bring her strength to bear on obstructing us.
I do. And all of a sudden I became concerned about my cell phone's battery. I hadn't charged it since the new year began, so it could die during our conversation. Where was my charger? Had I thrown it away again? She's not the type of person to give the same warning twice.
That's why it's weird. Then who the hell was the cat's eye who broke into my hotel room and left me a letter with the identical message?
I don't know, but it wouldn't take a cat's eye to leave a letter in your room while you were away. HN, what are you getting at? Are you saying the security at my hotel is too lax? Not taking her meaning, I let my honest reaction slip past my defenses. No, Senjogahara didn't even know the name of the hotel where I was staying. I didn't think so. Anyway, I hadn't told her, had I?
It's not like hotel security is all that great to begin with. The guests are free to come and go as they please.
Fair point. In luxury hotels, you need a key card to operate the elevator, and it's specifically keyed to your floor, but even then you can get around it easily. You just need to piggyback on someone else, the same way you'd get past an apartment building's auto lock. But even if it's easy to get into the hotel itself, entering into somebody's room is a different story. My hotel uses contactless key cards, so no chance of a duplicate key. If you wanted to get into someone's room, you'd need an inside man on the hotel staff, or someone to access the computer system from outside.
Take it down a notch. I could do it, and I'm no cat's eye, nor do I have some organization backing me up.
What are you saying?
If it's just an envelope, you could slide it under the door.
I digested Senjogahara's matter-of-fact words, added them up over and over again, and found no room for objection. Upon consideration, it was definitely strange that the envelope had been lying in front of the bathroom. If someone had broken into the room, they'd have left it on the coffee table or something, in which case the fact that the envelope was on the floor appeared to be proof positive that Senjogahara's deduction was right on the money. How do you like that? It's a conclusion worthy of consideration. It was more than that. It was almost definitely correct, but I maintained some outward diffidence. Or maybe I was just bluffing. No, forget maybe. I was just bluffing. What a pitiful adult, puffing himself up in front of a child. Or maybe pitiless, miserable. Either way. Either way. Senjogahara was so offhanded about it, and maybe I was blowing the whole thing out of proportion. But wouldn't most people suspect an intruder if they came back to their hotel room to find a mysterious letter lying on the floor? It'd be one thing if it was right inside, but if the letter were thrust in forcefully enough to make it halfway across the room, who would connect it to the crack under the door? It was at least a passable bluff.
Which hotel you're staying at isn't that hard for anyone to figure out either.
Senjogahara, let my bluff pass entirely. What a saint.
At least it'd be worth the hassle for whoever wants you to give up on this job. That person tailing you is a concern.
The tale might have nothing to do with this. It could be connected to another matter.
True, you've had your share of adventures in this town, though I'd be more concerned if it weren't related.
Same old, same old. I'm used to it. Don't give it a second thought. Naturally, I'm not tailed often enough to say same old, but I figured I could give Senjogahara a little peace of mind. Coming to me with this job was already anxiety-inducing for her, and I just didn't have the heart to give her more to worry about. In fact, I'd be grateful if it was the same old. I don't want this nice, clean job to get complicated at this stage, which is why I called you. I thought you might have some idea who it might be.
Unfortunately, no.
After all that build-up, Senjogahara's answer to my question was disproportionately plain. Even bland. So plain that if we were classmates, I'd be worried that she hated me. Well, she did hate me, of course.
I haven't even told anyone that I hired you in the first place.
Just because you haven't told anyone doesn't mean they couldn't find out. Maybe someone was listening in while you were talking to me in the hall at Araragi's house.
No chance. But I suppose Araragi could have figured it out if he secretly checked my cell phone.
Hey. He's not the kind of guy who'd do that. I surprised myself by saying this. So I had some esteem for Koyomi Araragi, which was unexpected, though I doubt hearing that would please him one bit.
No, he's not. You're absolutely right. And even if he caught on from the way I've been behaving, he wouldn't hide behind something as roundabout as an anonymous letter. He'd confront you face to face.
Sure. I agreed readily. What the hell was going on? Was I an Araragi sympathizer or something? But even if I was, I could be mistaken. Senjogahara, how would he actually react if he found out not just that I'm involved, but that there's a light at the end of the tunnel? You've been totally preoccupied with keeping it secret, but what would he say if he did confront me face to face? Would he tell me to withdraw too?
I guess so. Or no, I wonder.
You don't know.
Even I don't understand him completely.
That was like admitting defeat as his girlfriend, I thought. But then, women who claim to know everything there is to know about their boyfriends are infinitely more frightening, so Senjogahara was honestly in the right. Well, I don't know. But at least she was honest. I like honest people. They're easier to con. Well, I'll look into it, just to be on the safe side. After all, unlike Gain-senpai, whoever wrote that letter might try to interfere with my plan.
It was handwritten, right? The letter?
Yeah, it was. It seemed as though any notable characteristics of the handwriting had been intentionally obscured.
I see. But I might be able to glean something from it. It's already too late tonight, but maybe you could show it to me tomorrow.
Didn't you say you had no idea?
Just to be on the safe side.
Your vigilance is appreciated, but I considered concealing the truth somehow, but abandoned the idea because I knew Senjogahara wouldn't buy it. I opted to give it to her straight instead. It's impossible. I already tore up the letter.
Oh. What?
I flushed it down the toilet, so there's no chance of piecing it back together.
Why would you do that? It was important evidence.
Evidence. I'm not the police. And you know perfectly well that I immediately dump anything that's annoying or unnecessary.
Indeed I do. Given how you dumped me.
How's that? I dumped you?
Slip of the tongue. I got confused for a second and thought I was talking to Araragi.
I wasn't sure if her correction even worked as an excuse. If it was meant to hurt me, it was a catastrophic, nay, cataclysmic failure. But I'd let it go. Why torment a kid? Evidence and police work aside. Disposing of the letter had definitely been a bit hasty. Now Senjogahara must be wondering if there'd been any letter to begin with. She was entitled to a bit of sarcasm. Well, the letter was in my room. In other words, it was meant for me. I'll take care of it as part of the job, so don't concern yourself about it or feel like you need to do something. Just go, be with Araragi.
No can do. Sure, I want you to do your job. And I'll leave that entirely up to you. But I still have to do my best.
That was more than just dedication. She was probably envisioning a situation where I withdrew, or betrayed her, and ran away most prudent. Well, I wasn't going to ask what she had cooking. And if she had other irons in the fire for resolving the situation, maybe I ought to dial back the frequency of my phone calls.
By the way, Kaiki,
What?
do you actually intend to make a 100-day pilgrimage? That's not a lie.
Nope. Okay. It's not exactly true either. I don't intend to climb those steps 100 times. I'm no spring chicken. But I'm planning on going every day until the end of January.
Every day.
Which means my outlay will be around 300,000 yen. It's a necessary expense, but the severance package I received from Gan-senpai will more than cover it. The rest would go into my pocket. A hefty payout.
10,000 yen a visit. That's kind of like going to a hostess bar, isn't it?
Remarked Senjogahara, as if that was somehow disquieting. Though her tone was perfectly level. A hostess bar. For my part, I had likened Nadeko Sengoku to a gimmicky piggy bank. What a difference in sensibility. I was the over 30 middle-aged man, and Senjogahara the current high school girl, so it was as if we traded on metaphors.
To be honest, I'm kind of anxious about that. If you go every day, you might be seduced by Nadeko Sengoku. She might win you over to her side.
What? Are you jealous, Senjogahara? Apparently that joke had been over the line. It was probably a good thing we'd been speaking on the phone and not in person. If we had been at Mr. Donut, I might have gotten a merciless dousing. I thought about waiting for her to call back, but as the adult, I'd yield on this one. To top it off, the first words out of my mouth when I called her back were, "I'm sorry." What a guy if I do say so myself. Though there are few things in the world as unreliable as an apology from me.
It's no laughing matter.
Senjo Gahara didn't explicitly accept my apology, but she let it go and restarted the conversation.
She's a devilish one, that girl.
Did you know Nadeko Sengoku before all this?
No, I think I told you. She was Araragi's acquaintance. His friend. I'd never even heard of her until she became a god.
So, how can you say she's devilish? I got the sense that she was just a fool. A crazy fool, but still.
Right, you mention that. But I think it's precisely because I've never met her that I can make that judgment. I wasn't sure what to think when you said you were going to see her once every 3 days, but I feel compelled to warn you. Think twice about visiting her every single day.
Being warned to withdraw. Being warned about visiting Nadeko Sengoku every day. It was a hell of a day for warnings. Just to be clear, and this is a very important point, I cannot stand being warned by anyone. Duly noted. I'll take your kind warning into consideration. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps it'd be best not to go every day.
I just hope the snake's venom isn't addictive.
Sounding like she knew it all. Naturally, I let it go in one ear and out the other. We hung up without so much as a good night, and this time I plugged my cell phone into the charger, which I apparently hadn't gotten rid of. Then, as a nightcap, I began to update my notes.
Day number 3. It had been a busy day. Yotsugi Ononoki and Izuko Gain. Nadeko Sengoku using a snake for cat's cradle. My mysterious tale. Breaking and entering at the Sengoku residence, the closet thrown open to reveal its contents, and the letter dropped. No. Slipped into my room. The phone call with Senjo Gahara.
I added illustrated versions of these events to my notebook, which took about an hour. Then, turning the page, I decided to make my to-do list. The plan was in place, and with all the worrisome elements lined up neatly before me, now, if ever was the time to do so. 100-day pilgrimage to Kita Shirahebi Shrine, until the end of January. Vigilance Re, the person tailing me. Vigilance Level 2. Investigation into the identity of the letter sender, Necessity Level 4. Explore Gain Senpai's motives, low priority. Avoid Koyomi Araragi, top priority. Avoid the Araragi sisters, best effort. That about covered it, broadly speaking, I thought, before hastily adding, buy Cat's Cradle. One day of using an Ouroboros for Cat's Cradle was enough to last a lifetime. The next few days passed in a humdrum routine of trips to Kita Shirahebi Shrine, where dwelt the Ophidian deity Nadeko Sengoku. It'd be nice if I could say so at this point, but unfortunately, reality isn't that generous. Before I could begin my slow and steady progress, there was one more hurdle to overcome, if it was even a hurdle. The following day, January 4th, the New Year's holiday was over, and the world had more or less returned to business as usual. The first thing I did that day was go get some breakfast. Come to think of it, I hadn't eaten anything since the trip to Mr. Donut 2 nights prior. If I'm not careful, I forget to eat. Something is definitely wrong with how my brain processes hunger. Though maybe it's just that my appetite for money outweighs my appetite for food. After enjoying the breakfast buffet at the restaurant on the first floor of the hotel, I love the atmosphere of the all-you-can-eat experience. Or maybe the all-you-can behavior itself. I returned to my room. Then I took my morning shower, and when the time was right, I set out. I thought about trying to seal the crack under the door with tape, but if I started getting worked up over every little thing, there'd be no end to it, so I gave up on the idea. At the front desk I asked, "Excuse me, is there anywhere around here that would sell a cat's cradle?" I figured somewhere like Tokyo Hands or Loft would have them, but despite the fact that those places sell literally everything, they have a mysterious tendency to lack exactly the things I happen to be looking for. Given that they're big chains, maybe it's some kind of fraud prevention effort. So I was being cautious, but the concierge just said, "Hun," and cocked his head in confusion. It was no way to react to a guest, but I understood how he felt, so I said, "Never mind." I ended up making for Tokyo Hands after all. Even if they didn't have an actual cat's cradle, surely they'd have some string in the arts and crafts section. I strolled down the main drag keeping an eye on my surroundings, just in case someone was following me or watching me, but I simply couldn't tell. Perhaps someone was tailing me, perhaps nobody was. Gan-senpai wouldn't give the same warning twice, but there was a 1 in a million chance that Ononoki might be lying in wait for me. Yet that didn't seem to be the case either. Maybe she was off playing with Araragi at the moment. It hadn't been true when we met in the past, but nowadays she seemed to have become quite the liberated Shikigami. Good for her. I guess we owe our thanks to Araragi for that. I decided to do a little shopping. As long as I put another 10,000 yen note into the offertory box, I was pretty sure her snakeliness would rush out excitedly, saying, "Here's Nadeko." But I think it was bothering me that Senjo Bihara had compared what I was doing to visiting a hostess bar. I was buying some kind of offering just to emphasize that my trips to the shrine were devotional in nature. Some kind of offering, fruit or flowers, the usual choice for a shrine, would only exacerbate the hostess bar image, so I nixed that idea. Was I being too uptight? After giving it some thought, I decided to bring a bottle of sake and succeeded in locating a decent liquor store. I figured most guys who were going after a girl at a hostess bar wouldn't pick a local sake. You could also say I was just in a playful mood since I had money to burn. Any ethical opprobrium that I was trying to get a middle school girl drunk would be off the mark here. She was no longer a middle school girl. She was no longer human. She was a god. They say no god can refuse a tipple, so in fact it would disqualify her from divine status if she didn't drink the sake, which in a certain sense would solve the whole problem. I wanted to avoid being the jackass who upended the whole story by slipping and breaking the sake bottle on which so much was riding. I exercised the utmost care in climbing the snowy mountain path, and it was high noon by the time I arrived at Kitashirahebe Shrine. It was grueling carrying a magnum of sake up that mountain. I never wanted to do it again, but I had a feeling I was going to have to. Many times over. I was about to put 10,000 yen into the offertory box when a thought struck me, and I took out another 10,000 yen note, 20,000 yen altogether. If 10,000 yen bought such an entertaining entrance, I was dying to see what 20,000 would get me. Becoming free with my money the second I make an easy buck isn't great, but as far as I'm concerned, money exists to be spent, so no big deal. I slipped the 20,000 yen into the offertory box. Nadeko Sengoku dashed out from the shrine hall as vigorously as ever, but this time her agitation got the better of her and she went tumbling. She smacked her head on the corner of the offertory box so hard I thought she might be dead. For better or for worse, she was a god, so she got right back up, seeming relatively unhurt. She was unable to hide her agitation, however.
T20,000? Mr. Kaiki, did you mean to do that? You know you can't have it back, right?
Apparently, Nadeko Sengoku was only comfortable with donations of up to 10,000 yen. Her position that such limitations, notwithstanding money once put into the offertory box, couldn't be returned was laudable. She was like a contemporary video game arcade. It's fine.
Are you paying for tomorrow in advance?
That's just for today. And I brought this.
I placed the bottle of sake on the offertory box. I couldn't get it to stand up on the uneven surface, so I lay it on its side.
A special treat for you.
Zach, Nadeko's been wanting to try some.
A real booze hound. Unfortunately, she was a god after all. Though basically all monstrosities have a taste for alcohol, not just gods, but something about the way she said it bothered me. Was it a craving carried over from her time as a human being?
Dad only ever drank like beer, so this'll be Nadeko's first time drinking like sake.
Roger. I wasn't going to pursue it too deeply, but I got the impression that back when she was human, Nadeko Sengoku had been sneaking sips behind her parents' backs. The kind of people who would say, she doesn't look the type, or that's not like her, had almost certainly driven her to her current state, so I didn't feel like I could say anything. Not that I'm the kind of moralist who gets preachy over a bit of booze to begin with.
Mr. Kaiki, what's the difference between beer and sake?
If it's made from barley, it's beer. And if it's made from rice, it's sake.
With this crude explanation, I wrapped up that portion of the conversation and moved on to the next offering, or present.
I brought you this. Now you don't need to use a snake. I got you a bunch of spares as well, so you can pass the time playing to your heart's content.
Thanks. With this, Nadeko can kill time until it's time to kill Big Brother Koyami.
Because she always spoke in the same excited tone. It was hard to tell if the kid was actually excited, present progressive. She was excitable, sure, but that could simply be because she was amped up, high, which is precisely why a sudden mention of killing Araragi, for instance, froze my blood. I'm not a moralist, nor am I so fragile that I can't bear to see someone die. but that didn't mean I could remain calm in the face of such blithe deployment of the word kill. Naturally, my expression remained placid. The two are totally separate. It's not just a way to kill time. Sengoku, Cat's Cradle, is a deep, even profound pursuit.
I taught her some new tricks from among the ones in a Cat's Cradle compendium that I'd memorized the day before. I judged it best to stay focused on Cat's Cradle and not let the conversation drift for that day. We played for a few hours, then I said see you tomorrow, and left the shrine. I could tell that Nadeko Sengoku was waving goodbye behind me, but ignored it. It wasn't like I'd swallowed what Senjogahara said, but I might as well exercise caution about being won over by Nadeko Sengoku's devilish wiles, and not be too impatient in my bid to make friends with her. I'd left behind the huge bottle, so the descent was a breeze. And then, when I reached the bottom of the mountain, it happened. I meant to keep my eyes out for anyone following me on the walk back to the station, but as it turned out there was no need, because there she was, in plain view, waiting for me at the entrance to the stairway that led up to the shrine. Black and white. She gave the impression of a mix between the two. No, I'm not claiming I got some insight into her inner self from a single glance. It was just a simple impression created by the girl's hair, a mixture of stark white and midnight black. I naturally had no way of knowing who the hell she was, this girl wearing winter boots, with her rough duffel coat and earmuffs. But I intuited from her brazen attitude, her total lack of subterfuge, that she was not my tale from the day before, nor the one who had stealthily delivered the letter to my room. I intuited this. No, she made me intuit this.
Hello, Mr. Deishū Kaiki. We meet at last. My name is Tsubasa Hanekawa. I'm a classmate of Miss Senjogahara and Araragi's.
She, Tsubasa Hanekawa, that is, said, bowing deeply to me, swindler that I am. When she bowed, she naturally took her eyes off me for a few moments, during which time I could almost certainly have dashed away to safety. That's how much confidence I have in my speed. Unfortunately, however, it wouldn't have been a sure thing on that snowy road, and for some reason I didn't feel like running away from this girl, which was rare for me, or virtually unthinkable, but standing before this girl, I couldn't imagine being so cowardly as to flee, even though I had never once in my life thought that fleeing was in any way cowardly.
I'm Deishū Kaiki, though it seems an introduction is unnecessary. I can only surmise that you've heard of me from Senjogahara or Araragi, am I right?
You are.
Replied Hanekawa, raising her head with an earnest look. Something about that expression, combined with her fine features, threatened to overwhelm me. In possessing an intensity beyond her years, she was not unlike Senjogahara, birds of a feather flock together, yet this was...
But to be perfectly honest, I knew of you even before they told me about you. Having previously assisted the Fire Sisters with their investigation...
No need for a kid to speak so formally. You need to talk to me about something? I'll listen. Please go ahead. I may have a few things I want to talk to you about as well.
Brushing away a loose strand of hair with an M, Hanekawa said, "Fair enough, though perhaps this isn't the place." Her tone was still polite, which is to say it didn't swing all the way to informal, but her attitude seemed to soften somewhat.
There's something I need to ask you first, though. Do Senjogahara and Araragi know that you've come to see me?
Absolutely not.
Ah. Every last one of them. In my mind, another player took the stage in the tale of the watchfob and comb, but anyone trying to get in between those two lovebirds would be more like comic relief. Who was I to talk, though, when my own role had to remain every bit as surreptitious as Hanekawa's? Two clowns standing by the side of a snowy road. The thought even popped into my head that the two of us were in some sense birds of a feather ourselves. No skin off my nose, I couldn't care less. I'm not going to rat you out, don't worry. I have no intention of using your secret against you.
No need to spell it out. I'm not worried on that score.
Hanekawa stated with a wry smile. Her smile was also, how can I put this, roomy, expansive, capacious. Unfortunately, however, under that coat I couldn't gauge the size of those breasts Senjogahara had mentioned.
And from my perspective, our meeting doesn't need to be such a closely guarded secret anyway.
Oh, no?
I felt like I had missed an opportunity, but I suppose so. I began to walk along the snowy road.
But then, I'm a pariah in this town. Got to keep my presence a secret. It might be best not to be seen with you of all people. by virtue of which I was thinking of hailing a cab. That okay with you?
Yes, it is.
Hanekawa assented without ado. Never mind waiting for me out in the open like that, getting into a car with a swindler was beyond ballsy, and also beyond my ken. So much so that I myself shrank from this situation instead, but as the one to suggest it, I couldn't back out now. Hanekawa and I walked away from the mountain and found a taxi, skipped the train entirely, and headed straight to the shopping district. Maybe I was being too cautious, but this Tsubasa Hanekawa girl cut an overly conspicuous figure, so I don't think I was. If I were to be thoroughly security conscious, I'd part ways with her temporarily and rendezvous elsewhere a few hours later. Unlike Nadeko Sengoku though, it seemed Tsubasa Hanekawa wasn't very aware of her cutness or beauty, for better or for worse.
Yes, my hair really is conspicuous, isn't it? I'm sorry, when I was still going to school I dyed it black every morning. But what with winter break it completely slipped my mind.
She said this with a bashful air, and during the ride as we chatted idly and gossiped about nothing in particular, it struck me. Maybe this girl hadn't been doted on while she was growing up. Maybe her parents had been strict, or laissez-faire. It's not like we were discussing anything deep, so I couldn't say for sure, but the kid's oddly unchildlike attitude made me imagine such a past.
I heard from Senjogahara that you were overseas at the moment. What was that about? Was she trying to keep us from interacting? In other words, was she lying to me?
Oh no, it wasn't a lie. Or rather, Miss Senjogahara thought it was true when she said it. She and Araragi both think I'm still overseas.
Oh ho. What in the world was this girl trying to sell? What kind of gift was she trying to give? It was a mystery. Aside from making contact with me, there was no reason for her to keep her return to Japan secret, was there?
Yes. Well, at this point it's kind of a waste of effort, or a vain struggle for peace of mind. I'd hoped that such a feint might lead to a breakthrough.
A breakthrough?
Yes. I was pretty sure Mr. Oshino wasn't really overseas, so while I had a feeling it was doomed from the start, I thought maybe I could throw some sand if I left the country for a while. Or put up a smokescreen.
Sand in whose eyes? Nadeko Sengoku?
Her too? But Miss Gain, mainly.
Having said so, Hanekawa seemed to catch herself and apologized. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Kaiki, for speaking like that. It's rude of me when she's your senpai. Pardon me.
She's not my senpai anymore. Gain senpai disowned me. I sounded ludicrous, persisting in appending the honorific. But I didn't put an ounce of respect into the word in the first place. So don't worry about it. Right, I heard you'd gotten a direct warning from her. What can I say? That must have been tough. For a second, I almost started apologizing to Hanekawa. But I realized there was no reason to.
She chuckled.
I wanted her to think that I was on the wrong track, which is why I'm only back for a moment. I'll be off again tomorrow morning.
Only back for a moment? You sure you want to be spending any of that precious time with me?
Yes, I am.
Hanekawa nodded emphatically. Funny, her saying so seemed to imbue our little tete-a-tete with some deep significance.
It might not mean much against the all-knowing Miss Gain, but if my overseas trip freed up Miss Senjogahara and made her get in touch with you, then I'm glad. A happy accident. Or should I say a happy according to plan, Mr. Keiki?
She looked me in the eye. I'd never met anyone who could look another person so squarely in the eye.
Please save Miss Senjogahara, okay?
Not for free. I won't.
I declared, and began by making Hanekawa pay for the cab. She made a face like she couldn't believe her ears. But that was the extent of her protest, and she paid the fare with a credit card. Seemed a little uppity of her to use a credit card when she was only a high school student. But these days you probably need one if you're going to go traveling overseas.
Thank you very much,
I said, getting out of the taxi.
You're surprisingly decorous, aren't you, Mr. Kaiki?
Eh? What was she on about? I had just made her pay the cab fare. Did she mean devious?
Oh, nothing, anyway. Where shall we go? Preferably somewhere where we can talk at our leisure without being seen.
Right. Having returned secretly to Japan, she had to sneak around, just as much or probably more than me, even if it wasn't under duress. The Mr. Donut Senjogahara had taken me to woodwork, but it might be too crowded during the day.
We can speak back at my hotel if that's all right with you. The room was inexpensive, so I'm sure it's not where you're staying, but it's in this area too.
I don't mind. But are you?
It's fine. I'm not finicky about that sort of thing. And anyway, I like to think I'm a good judge of men.
Hanekawa smiled, and I had a mind to say something, but the more I argued, the guiltier I might feel, all on my own. So I thought better of it. Going to her hotel room probably looked better than going to mine too. But it takes a hell of a lot of swagger to tell a swindler to his face that you're a good judge of character, so I had to take my hat off to her.
You're very frank or open.
Was all I said. I fell in behind her, and she led us to her hotel, where I soon sat facing her across a narrow single room.
Should we order room service?
No. Please don't start ordering things on my tab. I may have a credit card, but that doesn't mean I have a lot of money.
Oh, really? She did tell me the room was inexpensive.
I worked my fingers to the bone until I found a ticket so cheap that I couldn't even believe it was legal, and I'm making my way around the world by taking advantage of as many discount tour packages as possible.
Wow.
I nodded. I could brag about my premium pass, 300 to blow her mind, but that wouldn't be very mature, so I let it go. Okay, not because it wouldn't be mature. If I bragged about a card costing 3 million yen, such an erudite young lady might quibble. Oh, but since you could rack up 200,000 miles with that, if you converted it into ED or into tickets, you'd get a much better bargain. I'm not even imprudent with my spending. It's more of an easy come, easy go thing. I had no hope of getting the better of someone like Tsubasa Hanekawa, who strides firmly down the sunny side of the street and keeps out of the shadows. In fact, working her fingers to the bone was like bragging to me. I almost wanted to pick a fight. People who lead decent, respectable lives need to realize that in and of itself, is deeply hurtful to people who don't lead decent, respectable lives.
People who lead decent, respectable lives need to realize that, in and of itself, is deeply hurtful to people who don't lead decent, respectable lives.
I picked it, at which Hanekawa took off her coat and hung it in the closet. With a decent, respectable smile, she said, "Yes, that's one way to look at it." I wanted to punch her in the face, but I wasn't sure I could salvage the situation afterwards, so I restrained myself.
Listen, Hanekawa, you need to talk to me about something and vice versa. I'm ready and willing to discuss those things, and very much want to, but before that, how about we sort out a unity of purpose?
Unity of purpose?
Yeah, 'cause all kinds of people with all kinds of motivations seem to be mixed up in this. Not to mention my tail, a possibility. Gan-senpai's watchdog, a possibility. And the person who wrote the mysterious letter, a certainty. For someone in my line of work, how people feel is important.
Tsubasa Hanekawa, who of course knew that my line of work was swindling, gave the most equivocal reply. So what? If that was going to make me fold, I couldn't call myself a swindler. You're no good until you've had a million no's thrust in your face.
Which is why I want to know up front. Hanekawa, you'd prefer for Senjogahara and Araragi to be saved, right?
Isn't that obvious? Didn't I just implore you to save her?
But to play devil's advocate, maybe you want me to save them because you don't want to save them yourself. By leaving it to somebody else, you get to double down on closing your eyes to the problem. Also, you might have gone overseas searching for Ashino, just to get to him before Senjogahara and Araragi to pull the wool over his eyes and make him not come back to Japan under any circumstances, or more directly, to ask him not to save them.
So you've managed to live this long being that suspicious of people, Hanekawa said, turning a little pale. Just that level of mistrust was something of a culture shock for her, it seemed. What a way to think of me. What an honest life she must have led.
I want to save Miss Senjogahara and Araragi, but I don't have to be the one to save them. I just don't want them to die, so it doesn't matter who saves them. It could be me, or Mr. Ashino, or you.
Swear to God. Given that we were dealing with Nadeko Sengoku, this was meant to be arch.
Swear to cat.
Tsubasa Hanekawa replied with a straight face. What the hell? Not an expression I was familiar with, but maybe it was some recent high school girl slang. Damn it, I'd fallen behind the times. Any questions on your part?
Han?
Don't you want to ask me about my perspective, how I feel? My client, at least, is terribly concerned. Don't you want to know why I accepted this job from Senjogahara, or confirm that I intend to see it through? Even as I harassed her, I didn't have a clever response lined up. If she threw those questions back at me, if she actually asked me, well, why did you, or if I asked, are you going to tell me? At that point, I'd have been at a loss for words. And who knows, I might have gotten pissed off and washed my hands of the whole thing. Back to Okinawa, done with Hitagi Senjogahara and Nadeko Sengoku, and through with cold climbs. I might have told Senjogahara that an adult doesn't just abandon a job, but that was yesterday, and this was today.
Hanekawa didn't ask either question, though. She just smiled and said, "I'm not going to ask you anything."
Okay then, if you don't mind. I'd like to get down to business. Hang on. Why aren't you? Are my feelings so transparent to you? I ended up asking her instead, belligerently, more than a little annoyed, even though the girl was over 10 years my junior.
But Hanekawa just kept on smiling. Stuck in a room with an older man who was trying to intimidate her, she showed no sign of fear.
You don't even need to ask, ha. You know everything, don't you, Missy?
I don't know everything. I just know what I know.
Hanekawa replied, still smiling. That shut me up. I was overwhelmed by those words. So reminiscent of Gaien Senpai nope, not a chance. Hanekawa didn't have Gaien Senpai's oppressive aura, and yet I'd been silenced. How can I put this? It felt silly. Being so cautious, probing every intention. She'd suddenly put things into context. Fine.
I'm sorry.
Let's get down to business. We're exchanging information, aren't we, Hanekawa? That said, you've got your own ideas about how to settle this, don't you? Quite apart from me and Senjogahara's plan. I'll give you the info you need for that, and you'll tell me everything you know.
And that's how, at long last, I got a sense of what precisely had been going on in that town over the course of the past few months. It was a more objective view than I could have gotten from Senjogahara, for sure. I learned in detail how Nadeko Sengoku had become a god, and about the harm her transformation had caused. And what Gaien Senpai, what Izuko Gaien, had been doing there. Even the half-vampire episode had gotten dragged into it. The whole thing was just bananas. Unfortunately, it'd be a stretch to say that Hanekawa got some useful information from me in return. That was unfortunate for her, of course, not me. So I wasn't particularly chagrined. Though our meeting wasn't too beneficial for Hanekawa, she didn't seem all that disappointed. So grounded. Enviable. Maybe. Well, her position was that it didn't matter who saved those two as long as they were saved, so I guess providing me with useful info was enough to satisfy her.
Here's the thing. From what you say, it's not because Kisot Esero Lorion Heart Underblade came here that the town got screwed up spiritually. Kisot Esero Lorion Heart Underblade was drawn to the town because it was screwed up already.
She didn't come right out and say it, but Miss Gain at least seems to think so, which is why she wanted to install a new god at Kita Shirahebi Shrine. And I guess when Araragi rejected her plan, an innocent middle school girl ended up with the job instead.
An innocent middle school girl.
What is it?
Nothing. I deflected Hanekawa's question with a shake of my head, since there was no point in discussing it.
That reminds me, have you interacted with Nadeko Sengoku much? And if so, what was your impression of her?
Interacted would be an exaggeration. We've met, but she's really Araragi's friend. So a friend of a friend. Plus, she's a lot younger.
A lot. No. A high school senior and a middle school second year are only about 4 years apart. But I guess when you're in your teens, that seems like a huge difference. Sengoku probably seems like a kid to Senjogahara and Araragi and Hanekawa in the same way that they seem like kids to me. But you have met. Let's hear it. What was your impression of her?
Timid, or bashful, or shy, or quiet.
As Hanekawa started listing off the words, I thought, here we go again. I'd already heard the same thing from Nadeko Sengoku's parents. I'd hoped Hanekawa might have a different take, given how she'd shut me up earlier. But the world wasn't such a convenient place. I shouldn't expect too much from a child.
But the inimitable Tsubasa Hanekawa proved me wrong. After pausing for a moment, she continued.
Quote, comma dot, and so on and so forth, wasn't the impression I got?
Wasn't the impression?
I'm sure that's what most people think when they see her. I'm not saying they're wrong, but the main impression I got was of being shut out.
Shut out?
I cocked my head.
Like the other kids at school giving her the silent treatment?
I asked in clarification. The girl in the pics I'd seen definitely had the air of a kid who might be bullied, though now that she was a god, that vibe was totally gone.
No, that's not what I meant. I felt as though I was the one being shut out. Me and everyone else. That girl's world is hermetically sealed. Nothing anybody says actually reaches her. Mr. Ashino was very concerned about her too, but in the end his concern didn't reach her either. She says she loves Araragi and apparently wants to kill him and Miss Senjogahara because of that, but at this stage I think it's safe to say that she doesn't really love anyone. She doesn't even see anyone besides herself.
Well, quite the keen insight. Even so, it'd be a mistake to lay the blame on Nadeko Sengoku or to attack her on a personal level. It was everyone else's fault that she became who she was. Her parents and everyone else who celebrated her as cute, who treated her like a mascot.
But it wasn't like Hanekawa was blaming her for that either, because she added, I'd like to save her as well if we can.
Well, don't expect me to do that. Deceiving her is the job I signed on for.
I'm aware of that. It's just my selfish hope.
Araragi probably feels the same way, huh?
I imagine he does, but the problem at hand is her desire to kill him and Senjogahara. That's definitely got to be dealt with first. We don't have to rescue everyone in one fell swoop.
Her words were as rational as her desires were idealistic. Any teacher faced with a student like her would have a hell of a time. Well, best of luck to them. I was here to do my job and nothing more. But Hanekawa, if by rescuing her you mean turning Nadeko Sengoku back into a human being, think again. I'm pretty sure you haven't spoken to her since she became a god, but she seems happy.
Just because someone thinks they're happy doesn't mean they are.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's what I think.
Apparently. And obstinately. Could she be speaking from experience? She'd had her own run-ins with aberrations. She'd been bewitched, and maybe that was the lesson she took home from it. If so, it was a valuable lesson. She should take that lesson to heart, but she didn't need me to tell her that. Tsubasa Hanekawa had clearly done so. Well, if that works for you, go ahead and think it. After I'm done pulling the wool over her eyes, feel free to jump in and save her.
What? That ups the difficulty level of my job, doesn't it? I'd intended to take up the peripatetic life right after graduation, but I guess things aren't going to go as planned.
Should I advise her to forget about imitating Oshino? I waffled a bit, but figured I'd be overstepping my bounds and kept my mouth shut. Never mind overstepping, it was simply no concern of mine. It's every person's right to decide what kind of life to lead up to, and including becoming a god. I thought, but no point in wielding that opinion at Hanekawa. I meet a lot of people like her in my line of work, people whose hearts are sealed shut. And yeah, you're right. She definitely does tune out everyone else. Ultimately, people like that think only of themselves. If you ask me, they deserve my deceptions. I delivered the villainous line in part so I could observe Hanekawa's reaction. I meant it, but I also exploited my genuine feeling to try and sound her out.
But Hanekawa just let it pass.
I was under the impression that no one's immune to your deceptions, though all bets are off when it comes to a god. I want to ask you something, Mr. Kaki, but I'm afraid you might think it rude.
What are you talking about? We're well past the point of worrying about being rude.
Do you really think you can help her fall for it?
A strange way of putting it. Help her fall for it? That made it sound like an act of mercy. Like I was kindly lying to Nadeko Sengoku for her own sake. Ridiculous. I already told Senjogahara this, but duping that girl is going to be a piece of cake. Don't you worry, Hanekawa. I'm not one to put my seal on any kind of document, but that one has my full seal of approval.
Okay, great. Well, strictly speaking, I'm not concerned about that in particular. It's just...
Suddenly, Hanekawa became inarticulate. She started to say something, then thought better of it, then seemed about to speak again, then stopped again. It drove me crazy. It made me want to force it out of her. Not that I'd ever get violent with a high school girl.
Mr. Kaiki, will you tell me about Mr. Oshino's family?
Then, although I have no idea whether it was what she'd been about to say, Hanekawa faced me and fired out of left field.
Her question seemed totally unrelated to the matter at hand. Or no, maybe she wanted to talk to Oshino's family because she needed to find him. That would be the right way to go about it if the missing person was anyone other than Mime Shino. He doesn't have a family.
Neither do I. What about it? No. Then, what about a niece, for instance?
Hanekawa searched for the right words. What? Had she really pinned her hopes on Oshino's family? Because she was being wildly optimistic if she thought that Drifter had anything like a proper family. A niece? That came out of the blue as well. Needless to say, a niece would be his brother or sister's child, Oshino's brother or sister. Where did she get that idea? I told her the truth, at least to the best of my knowledge. He doesn't have any brothers or sisters. None. It's not that his family died. It's not that they're estranged. He's a man without a single relative, and he always has been. Something the matter?
No, Mr. Kaiki, I'm willing to pay, so please don't tell anyone that I asked you about Mr. Oshino's private life.
Now, I can't condone that kind of bribery. Starting so young. God only knows what the future holds for you.
I said, simultaneously thrusting out my right hand. Without a word, Hanekawa took a 500 yen coin from her wallet and laid it on my outstretched palm.
500 yen?
I'm sorry, that's all the cash I have on me.
Fine.
I felt around in my pocket and handed her whatever I found there as change. It may well have been more than 500 yen. But, if it was, so be it.
What's this?
Your change plus a little extra for everything you've told me. Payment for services rendered.
I don't want money, but I guess this isn't an amount worth quibbling over.
Hanekawa counted the coins in the palm of her hand.
You really are decorous, Mr. Kaiki.
No such thing as a decorous swindler. I'm just serious, that's all.
As before, I didn't understand what Hanekawa meant, but this time I'd been able to respond in kind. Hanekawa and I continued to talk a while longer, until nightfall. It was just idle chatter, but chatter that seemed like it might prove useful in the future. It was stuff I should have paid for in 10,000 yen bills. Not small change, but that'd have really made me feel like I was at a hostess bar, so I held off. I figured I might as well ask her if she had any idea who had left the letter in my hotel room, but her response was, "I'm afraid not," like she said she didn't know everything. Ordinarily, I'd suspect that Tsubasa Hanekawa herself was my tail, or the letter sender, but strangely enough my suspicion evaporated during the course of our conversation. A rare event, but not a first. For instance, about once a month I even go to sleep without suspecting that I might not wake up the next morning.
But Mr. Kaiki, after something like that, shouldn't you change hotels?
Maybe, since I was only planning to stay there for a week to begin with. But the same thing might happen at whatever new hotel I check into. If I react too strongly, whoever it is might decide to push their luck.
I see your point.
That being said, if I received another letter, I'd definitely consider switching hotels.
Oh yes, Mr. Kaiki. Incidentally, our little chat also included the following conversation.
Araragi told me there's a sealed closet in Sengoku's room. Whatever's in it. She told even her beloved big brother Koyomi that he must never open it. You went into her room when you were at her house, didn't you, Mr. Kaki? Did you look in there?
Nope. Naturally, I kept my breaking and entering a secret from Hanekawa. Just like with Senjogahara, I act in bad faith in any sort of negotiation. A closet, you say? There's one in her room. I didn't notice.
I see.
What do you think is inside?
I don't know. But if she's that desperate to keep it secret, might it be...
Nope. Just useless garbage. I very nearly told her as much, but stopped myself on the brink. Strange. Why did I almost tell her about that trash?
Now I can finally say the next few days passed in a humdrum routine of trips to Kitashirahibi Shrine, where dwelt the Ophidian deity Nadeko Sengoku. The next few days passed in a humdrum routine of trips to Kitashirahibi Shrine, where dwelt the Ophidian deity Nadeko Sengoku. I went there virtually every day, or literally every day, to play with her. Play with is terribly insolent of a worshipper, but that's the most accurate description. So what can you do? I got pretty good at Cat's Cradle, and we left the one-person stuff behind and moved on to two-person techniques. Nadeko Sengoku and I played endlessly. I read and memorized many more books on the subject. We Cat's Cradle day in and day out, on and on and on. But even with all that practice, Nadeko Sengoku couldn't progress beyond a certain level. And to be fair, neither could I. Cat's Cradle is a deep, even profound pursuit. We just couldn't measure up to Nobita. Even though we hit that wall, Nadeko Sengoku didn't get sick of it like I did. She didn't give up on it, she just happily kept on playing. I brought her other toys, tops, blocks, basically anything you could play with for a long time that didn't require electricity, to see if she was into them, and she was, but in the end we always returned to Cat's Cradle. Maybe it meant something to her, but no matter. Anything that helped me connect with her was okay in my book. And while I couldn't do it every day, since Nadeko Sengoku seemed to have taken a shine to sake, I lugged a big bottle of it up to the shrine about twice a week. I prefer Western liquor, so I didn't join her much, but she became a heroic quaffer of the Japanese stuff. I hadn't thought to bring her a cup or anything, though thanks to which she drank straight from those enormous bottles. Outwardly, or at least size-wise, given that her head was covered in snake hair, she was a middle school girl, so her cradling a huge bottle in her little arms and chugging from it was, how can I put this, not something you see every day. A real sight for sore eyes. I'd gladly pay for the honor. Nadeko Sengoku gave herself over to the most divine pursuit of guzzling booze, like there was no tomorrow, but apparently being a god didn't mean she couldn't get drunk. When she was done with the sake, she was even cheerier than usual. This was naturally exhausting for me, and on such occasions I would depart early. Every time I'd tell myself never again, but I always ended up wanting another taste of her merriment. While I said about twice a week, I might have brought her sake pretty damn often, and that was my life for a month. Go up the mountain, pay 10,000 yen, have some fun with Cat's Cradle, chat, imbibe on occasion. There was no particular trouble, no one tried to get in my way, and a second letter never appeared in my hotel room. Staying at the same place for over a month just because no letter appeared would have been suspicious. So I did move after the first week as planned, but nothing much changed at the new spot. Every once in a while I sensed someone tailing me, but no big deal. Perhaps because I never tried to unmask them. They didn't take it to the next level. And who knows, it could be my imagination after all. Under the circumstances, it was entirely possible that it was just a case of nerves. Other than that, nothing worth mentioning. I'd heard from Hanekawa that there was, or strictly speaking, had been an abandoned cram school where Ashino had holed up during his stay, and I went to visit it on a whim sometime around the middle of January. Just a stark white expanse. The building was gone, and snow was piled up high. The place had caught fire in August or September of last year and burned to the ground. The incident involved Gain-senpai an episode, as well as Koyomi Araragi and Shinobu Oshino, and was also an underlying cause of the present fix. Because on that occasion Araragi received a certain important item from Gain-senpai that ended up turning Nadeko Sengoku into a god. Gain-senpai, however, had wanted him to use it on Shinobu Oshino. I wasn't there, so I don't know if Araragi made the right decision, which is to say, I don't care to know, or so much as think about it. I'm not Araragi, nor am I Shinobu Oshino, or Nadeko Sengoku, nor am I Gain-senpai. In other words, that story has nothing to do with me. What Hanekawa had told me gave me some sense of Gain-senpai's motives, but again, I wasn't interested at all in pondering whether they were good or evil, right or wrong. While part of me hoped to find a clue to aid me in my current task, I basically went to the ruins, or the former site of those ruins, half out of curiosity and half just for the hell of it. It wouldn't hurt to see where Ashino had spent his time. The building itself was gone, though, so I can't say I got much satisfaction on that account. But there was an interesting coincidence, the thing worth mentioning. In that now empty lot, I happened to run into a girl I know named Roka Namachi. I'd met her elsewhere some years before, turns out. She was from this town. That seemed like a potentially useful piece of information. If I wanted to involve myself with Saruga Kanbaro somewhere down the line, for instance. And so January came to a close. They say that January jets, February flees, and March makes its getaway. And so 30 days were gone. 31 if you include New Year's Day, when I got the call about the job. My plans and records and to-do lists had ballooned to 10 notebooks to be torn up and thrown away once the job was over, but looking over them at night in my hotel room before going to bed filled me with this sense that I'd worked, with satisfaction, a swindler's fulfillment. I spoke to Senjo Gahara on the phone throughout the month, but the meeting at Mr. Donut was the last time we met face to face. I probably wouldn't be billing her for any further expenses, and if I could finish the job without us seeing each other again, that seemed for the best. Hanekawa left the country on January 5th, the day after we met, though that might be untrue. Maybe she stayed in Japan or secretly returned right away, searching for Oshino or trying another approach. Whatever the case, I wasn't going to pay her too much mind. I had a job to do, and she could keep on doing things her own way. I didn't get in touch with Mr. and Mrs. Sengoku again, and they didn't contact me. However the job turned out, I wouldn't have to deal with that law-abiding couple for the rest of my life. Oh, also it came time for the national exams. I never once ran into Araragi jumping the gun on visiting Nadeko Sengoku during the course of my 100-day pilgrimage, so I guess he'd gotten real about prepping for them. By the by, according to Senjo Gahara, he sat for them properly, and properly failed to obtain good marks. Made sense, since his life was on the line. At least he had an excuse. If I pulled off my grand deception of Nadeko Sengoku, helped her fall for it, as Hanekawa put it, he'd have no excuse for his secondary exams. That provided me with some extra incentive to get it done. Assuming his low scores hadn't already put him out of contention. And so January came to a close. February began, and the appointed day arrived.
I see. So today's the day, at last.
Yeah, at last is right.
Before leaving the hotel, I placed an early morning phone call to Senjo Gahara. Winter break was over, and third term had begun, which is why I had to call early in the morning, though Senjo Gahara, who was in her final year, didn't actually have to show up every day. She's serious about the oddest things. A serious odd girl is what she is.
Is it going to be okay? I'm kind of tense.
Don't be.
I said in a calm voice. Naturally, I felt a certain tension as well when I thought the job was coming to an end to fruition. Remaining calm was the mature thing to do, though.
I'll call you tonight to give my final report. All you have left to do is prepare for a celebratory toast with Araragi.
A toast.
I don't know what was going on in Senjo Gahara's head, but the words came out like a sigh. Not like the tension or strain was getting to her. She just seemed kind of listless. What was up with her?
Did something happen? Had the circumstances changed this close to the finish line? That happens all the time, in fact. That's work for you. It's always, and I do mean always, right before the finish line that everything goes belly up.
No, it's just realizing that I'm only going to talk to you one more time after this makes me feel a little blue.
Senjo Gahara lamented, clearly insincerely.
I feel the same way. Being in frequent touch with you really brought me back. It was a real pleasure.
Somewhat insulted that she thought she could fool me like that, I returned with equal insincerity. It was more like insensitivity in my case. I wouldn't have been surprised if she hung up on me. It had happened plenty of times over the last month. I'd hang up on her, she'd hang up on me. How did we ever get to today without the job getting cancelled? But Senjo Gahara just chuckled. Heh. It gave me the creeps. She wasn't much of a lacquer, or no. Was that assessment 2 years out of date? She was different now, more so than if she were a different person altogether.
Of course I'll raise a toast with Araragi. But Kaiki, do I need to do something to show my appreciation? Should we meet one last time?
No need. Lay off the bad jokes. Thanks to Gain Senpai, I don't have to bill you for expenses, and am coming out ahead. There's no reason to show me any gratitude. Oh, and this isn't a follow-up or anything, but Senjo Gahara.
What?
Do you remember what we said at the beginning of January? Let me remind you just in case. Give Araragi strict instructions. He might be busy right now with exam prep, but if he waltzes up to Kitashira Hebi Shrine to see Nadeko Sengoku after I've duped her, everything will go to shit.
Yeah, but it's gonna be a real problem. Leveling with him means fessing up that you were involved. It could make him that much more stubborn about going up to see Nadeko Sengoku.
He's your boyfriend. So if it comes to it, seriously, play up to him and persuade him with some line about just doing it for your sake, or having to choose between you and her.
Don't you get it? If I could, my life wouldn't have turned out this way.
Fair enough, but with their lives on the line, couldn't she pull together such a performance, even if it was hard?
It's not an issue of can or can't. Even if I did, Araragi wouldn't buy it. I'm an excellent performer, but if I do that out of nowhere, it's going to seem blatantly unnatural.
Sure. So don't do it out of nowhere. Just like I spent all of January buttering up Nadeko Sengoku, take February to butter up Araragi.
Butter up. Any relationship is just a game to you, I take it.
I don't play games. I denied without a moment's hesitation, but depending on how you looked at it, our conversation itself was a sort of game. I'd groomed myself to be someone who couldn't be gamed, but that didn't necessarily mean I didn't play games. Anyway, at this point the time constraints have been lifted. If you want to rescue Nadeko Sengoku, it's not too late to do it once you guys are in college. I was, of course, keeping my meeting with Hanekawa secret from Senjo Gahara, but I had her words in mind as I continued. So if you really can't persuade Araragi, then dream up any old reason for him not to go near the mountain. Your lives depend on it, so get it done.
You're right. Our lives depend on it.
Yes, Senjo Gahara's life was on the line, and so was Araragi's. Whatever she tried, it wouldn't be in bad faith. Or would it? Should lovers keep no secrets for any reason? I had no idea. I really didn't. Hey, Senjo Gahara, can I ask you something?
What is it?
What do you love about Araragi?
That he isn't you. Maybe she thought this was clever and sarcastic, but the basis for her selection of a lover seemed to be centered on me, if only via a process of elimination, and she corrected herself. Because he's Araragi. If Araragi wasn't Araragi, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have fallen in love with him.
You've lost me, I said. You're so passionate about him, so into him you're willing to sacrifice your life on his behalf, but I bet you'll break up when you get to college. Or maybe once you graduate from college. High school couples don't usually make it all the way to the altar. It's just bullshit puppy love.
I'm going to let that one slide. Even I'm not so reckless as to pull the rug out from under everything at this point. But will you at least tell me why you're being so mean?
I was genuinely surprised to hear her respond with such an admirable attitude, instead of a retort. And since she'd asked, why was I being so mean to a high school kid, whether it was puppy love or not? If they were enjoying themselves, then wasn't that good enough? Why was I throwing shade on their romance? Wasn't it like telling a kindergartner playing house in the sandbox? Married life isn't really like that. I was ashamed of myself, so I cut the conversation short without addressing her question. Anyway, congrats. I'm glad you and your beloved Araragi will make it through this in one piece.
Aren't you being a little hasty, or do you just have that much confidence in yourself? If something goes wrong today, then the whole thing has gone wrong. You can't possibly think you've already succeeded.
I can. Running the simulation in my head one more time, I felt even more confident than before that convincing Nadeko Sengoku would be a piece of cake. I wasn't letting my guard down, and I guess I was kind of tense, but there was no need to tell Senjo Gahara. Don't worry. By the time you get home from school, everything will be taken care of.
I see. Well then. I assumed that meant she was about to hang up, but Senjo Gahara kept on talking. Saying this after you've succeeded, after you've saved me, would be nasty. so I'm going to say it now, if you don't mind.
What is it?
Don't start feeling too good about yourself just because you've saved my life. I mean, of course I'll be grateful. Of course I'll thank you. And if you change your mind and want more money, I'll pay. I'll do whatever you say. I just don't want you to think that this means I've forgotten about what you did to me, because I'll hold it against you for the rest of my life. I'll always detest you and hate you.
Yeah? I nodded, but only ambiguously. Why was she stating the obvious? Was it really something that needed to be said for the record? I didn't get her. At all, though upon reflection, she'd been this way ever since I'd known her.
And the promise is still in effect, she reminded. When this is over, you'll never set foot in this town again. Don't ever let me, Araragi or me, see your face again.
Sure, I've never broken a promise, I maintained.
To which Senjugahara replied tonelessly, That's right, isn't it? You've never once lied to me. Not now, not ever.
I hung up, then checked out of the hotel and walked outside. My luggage had proliferated considerably as I went about my business. What with the notebooks and changes of clothes, so checking out empty-handed wasn't an option. I left pulling along behind me a rolling suitcase I had acquired. There was no way I was going to drag the damn thing up that mountain, though, so I left it in a coin locker at the station. Or maybe coin locker is an outdated term since I locked it using the chip in my cell phone.
Either way, since I was going to dispose of almost everything in the suitcase after the job was done, I probably could have gotten rid of it all right then, suitcase and all, but you never know what life is going to throw at you. The teachers at school always used to say, "You're still on the field trip until you get home," which is more than just cautious and a little pathological, but there's something to it. And so I took one other precaution before going to Kitashire-Hebi Shrine that day, like I said. You never know what life is going to throw at you. And boy, was I right about that.
After I put the suitcase in the locker and got on the train to that town, I'd missed rush hour, so it was empty during that very trip. A little girl sat down next to me. It was the Shikigami Yotsugi, Ononoki.
Yeah, she'd said, flashing a sideways peace sign, expressionless as ever.
What now? I asked, facing straight ahead without so much as a glance at the girl beside me. I thought Gain-senpai disowned me.
Well, it was only ever Miss Gain who cut ties with you, not me. You'll always be big brother Kaiki to me, nothing can change that.
Change it, already. Call me Kaiki.
Okay, she said. Then went on impassively exceedingly, and extremely impassively. But so you really do intend to defy Miss Gain, I thought, and hoped that you'd change your mind at the last minute.
Are you sure Gan-senpai didn't send you?
Hun, definitely not. I'm just going to play with Le Monstier.
Was that another nickname for Koyomi Araragi? Not bad at all for Ononoki.
He always pampers me. Anyway, it's just a coincidence that I happen to be sitting next to you like this, Kaiki.
Hell of a coincidence. The world's a funny place.
Yup. It's funny, all right. Downright hilarious.
I mulled things over. Ordinarily, I'd suspect that she'd been ordered to come and issue a final warning, by Keijinui maybe, if not Gain-senpai. But maybe it was a coincidence. Under any other circumstances, I'd never believe it in a million years. But just this once I did. Alternately, perhaps Ononoki, the corpse Tsukumogami, who supposedly had no will of her own to speak of, had come to warn me for her own reasons, which was impossible, but also, why not?
3 million yen doesn't amount to much in return for defying Miss Gain. I have to say, it's going to get harder for you in the biz, Kaiki, even if that's not what Miss Gain intended.
Life isn't a free ride. I've often thought that my life is cheap, but a free ride, never. Even Gan-senpai has enemies. I'll work my magic on them and ride things out for a while.
Is someone else's girlfriend that important to you? An odd thing to say. I guess hanging out with the wrong crowd warps your personality. Someone else's girlfriend and your former woman.
Seems like you've got the wrong impression. Not that I care to correct you. Best to let people's misunderstandings be. And aberrations, too, for that matter.
Anoki, wrong-headed as she was, ran with her misunderstanding. It's not like you, Kaiki. No good can come of doing things that aren't like you. It's not like you haven't made the same mistake before. Oh, but maybe it's not so unlike you after all. 2 years ago, was it? You bankrupted a pretty large-scale religious organization with your scams? I remember because I was made to help, if only indirectly. Wasn't that for Senjogahara's sake, too? Her mother had fallen for a shady religion, or rather, it had entrapped her mother, and you put them out of business even though you didn't get much money out of it. For that girl's sake, yes? Though in the end, her mother just transferred her allegiance to another group one step up the ladder, and nothing actually got solved.
Don't go getting any funny ideas. It just happened to come to my attention in the middle of a job that this religious organization was trying to take a cut of my earnings, so I did what I had to do. But it's true that I didn't get much money out of it, and you can think whatever you like. It doesn't do me any harm to be thought of as a good guy. As a business venture, the whole thing was a bust.
And is this time going to be any different? That's what Ms. Gaines really worried about. Not some no-name town she has no ties to. It's you that she's concerned about. You doing something else that's not like you.
I don't care for such a patronizing attitude. Not from such a patron.
You tore apart the Senjogahara household and backed her parents into a corner from which divorce was the only way out, because nothing else was going to work, right? You judged that their only daughter would have no future if you didn't cut her mother off from the family.
Ha ha ha. That's right. That's exactly right. I was actually a stand-up guy. A real sweetheart, just looking out for a kid. I was only putting on a show of being nefarious. You've got all the details, don't you? You're really well informed. But don't tell anyone, okay? It's embarrassing.
That was a bust too. You didn't understand a daughter's feeling for her mother.
You're right. You're right. I really didn't get it back then, did I? Gotta be careful not to make the same mistake again. Well, life goes on. I'm going to try to do better.
Is that the sort of guy you are?
Yup, I'm that sort of guy.
Maybe you just don't know what you're doing.
Does anyone know what the hell they're doing? Do you even know why you're talking to me and telling me this?
You've got a very high probability of success. It should be a snap for you to dupe a Nadeko Sengoku, generally speaking. But you always fail in these instances. You always have failed. At least, Miss Gaines seems to think so, and that's all I have to say.
I see, I replied curtly. I didn't have much of a reaction, didn't tell her what I thought of that. I spent the rest of the train ride listening to her talk about Kagenue's recent exploits. Sounded like she was the same as ever, marching to the beat of her own drum, same as ever. The first time I met Hitagi Senjogahara 2 years ago. In other words, I thought to myself, what a fragile-seeming kid. Of course, back then, Senjogahara was afflicted with her mysterious ailment, which is why her devout mother had summoned me, flying the flag of the Ghostbuster as I was. But even without the ailment business, I thought she seemed fragile. That impression hadn't changed. Fragile. Even now that her ailment had been cured, even though she had a boyfriend, even though she had turned over a new leaf, she seemed fragile. If Nadeko Sengoku was a broken girl, Hitagi Senjogahara was a breakable girl, fragile, on the edge of fragmentation, which is exactly why her current self was a miracle. A mysterious ailment followed by a miraculous achievement for someone who seemed so breakable to make it so far without ever breaking. Not 2 years ago, not now for 18 years. The mother broke, but the daughter didn't, whatever the future might bring. At least right then, at that moment, she would not break, because I was going to hoodwink Nadeko Sengoku.
Here's Nadeko.
As I inserted a 10,000 yen bill into the offertory box, Nadeko Sengoku made the same entrance she'd made every day for the last month. At this point, I was tired of her funny pose. A little fed up with it. At the same time, when I thought that I'd never see her again, I felt strangely wistful.
No, hang on. Although I did go and check out of the hotel, since I'd told her it would be a 100-day pilgrimage, shouldn't I actually visit for another 70 days? If I pulled an Irish goodbye right after feeding my lie to her, the perceived reliability of the info might plummet. Maybe not. Another 70 days. But how about 30? Whoa. As if I was really reluctant to say goodbye to Nadeko Sengoku, as if I'm the type who doesn't know when to pull out, to bow out. Definitely best to call it quits today. Sure, it might be better to keep visiting, but the more contact we had, the more likely that my lie would be exposed. And once she heard the shocking news that her beloved big brother Koyomi had died before she could lift a finger, I'd immediately become irrelevant, no doubt.
Wow. 10,000 yen. 10,000 yen.
I was somewhat tired of Nadeko Sengoku's eccentric behavior, but she evidently wasn't tired of a 10,000 yen offering and rejoiced as always. Well, loving money is good and honest. At that point, though, the total was over 300,000 yen. So she was quite an expensive woman.
I couldn't just get down to business right away, so I spent a while playing at Cat's Cradle and feeding her sake as usual.
Then just as I was looking for an opening, Nadeko Sengoku struck. Oh yeah! Mr. Kaiki, the bridge shape I'd been making with the string in my hands collapsed, but Nadeko Sengoku plunged ahead without even noticing. It's about time, let's hear it.
I had no idea what she had in mind, a new cat's cradle technique. I'd shown her all the ones I knew. That well had run dry, but that wasn't what Nadeko Sengoku was talking about. What she was talking about, what she was demanding to hear, was my dear wish, for which I was willing to perform a 100-day pilgrimage. Right. My wish.
Yeah! It seems like Nadeko's just getting a bunch of money, and that's not fair. Nadeko only just became a god, so who knows if I can grant your wish. But come on, Mr. Kaiki, at least say what it is.
Ouch. I'd forgotten about it. I hadn't even thought about it, having put it off for so long, not intending to complete the pilgrimage in the first place. I was stumped. Did I say something about commercial prosperity? I never should have. There was no way I could tell her the particulars of my business. I felt like she'd found the chink in my armor. What to do? Still empty of ideas. I said, the thing about wishes is that they can't come true if you share them with someone. Just to keep the conversation going. Inside, I was working feverishly to find a way to weasel out of my plight, though I'm sure I displayed no outward change.
Huh, Nadeko Sengoku cocked her head. What do you mean?
You'll be the one to decide how things are done here from now on. But in the case of New Year's shrine visits, for example, your wish is something you don't tell anybody. If you do, it can't come true.
Why won't your wish come true if you tell it to somebody?
Because words can't be trusted. I bet there's a more pious explanation, but I decided to go with my pet theory. Unprepared as I'd been for Nadeko Sengoku's surprise attack, I'd use it as an opportunity to get down to the real reason for my visit. The second you say it out loud to someone, it deviates from your true feelings. All words are lies. It's all a scam. No matter how true, the moment you utter it, it becomes embellished. Words are only representations, so impurities find their way in. If you want to make a wish, to make it exactly as it is, you absolutely mustn't say it out loud.
Okay, but she asked confusedly, how can a Nadeko grant your wish without knowing what it is? Plus, Nadeko's talked out loud about her wishes a whole lot.
Got her. I'd been afraid she might miss the point I was nudging her towards, but apparently she was at least that clever. Maybe she was smarter than a ladybug after all.
Nadeko's been talking all along about killing Big Brother Koyomi, and that person who's his sweetheart, and the one who's his slave.
Yes, you have. Which is why I mustered all the artistry and embellishment at my command to speak the false empty words I'd prepared for her. That wish won't be granted. You talked so much about it. It can no longer come true.
What do you mean?
That's what I need to talk to you about today. That's what I've come to tell you. The people you want to kill, Koyomi Ara, and Hitagi Senjogahara, and Shinobu Oshino, they all died last night in a car accident.
Nadeko Sengoku's eyes widened in surprise. The eyes of the 100,000 snakes on her head also widened then.
With an enchanted smile, she said, "You too, Mr. Kaki. You trick me."
I had done an impeccable job. That, at least, I can say with confidence. I'd climbed the perilous mountain path to that shrine every day for a full month, gingerly laying the groundwork for today. But Nadeko Sengoku saw right through my lie, which meant she'd never trusted me in the first place, not even a tiny bit. She hadn't believed in me. She hadn't been suspicious, but she hadn't believed in me. So I hadn't deceived her at all in a sense. You could say that she was the one who'd fooled me. Intellectually speaking, in terms of smarts, duping Nadeko Sengoku should have been a piece of cake. Comparing her to a ladybug might be going too far, but pulling one over on her should have been easy for a con artist. But it wasn't. I ought to have given more weight to the emotional side of things. I hadn't intended to take it lightly by any means. But nevertheless, I hadn't realized just how closed off the girl's heart really was. Not the darkness in her heart of darkness. She shut out everybody else. Too late, Hanekawa's words reverberated through my mind. I'd thought that a month of cat's cradle and almsgiving and sacred had amounted to at least a modicum of credibility, but I was a grand fool to believe that I'd won Nadeko Sengoku's trust. I may have been her very first believer, but she didn't believe in me. Not for a second. Neither trusting me nor doubting me. I was just me to her. It brought to mind the snake she'd made into a cat's cradle, the Ouroboros, eating its own tail, the snake that only engaged with itself.
Such liars. It's everyone lies all the time.
The mountain on which Kitashirahebi Shrine sat underwent a sudden serpentine transformation. No, I'm making it sound as if the mountain itself became one giant snake, like in a myth or folktale. That's not what happened, but it's the best way to express how it felt. Countless white snakes started pouring forth from the precincts of the shrine, from the main hall, from within the offertory box, from beneath boulders, from the snowbanks, from behind trees, one after another in mass. An endless stream of snakes began to appear seemingly out of thin air. 100,000 had been nothing. Snakes of every conceivable size blanketed everything, as white as the carpet of snow but far too numerous to be hidden by it. Snake after snake, after snake after snake. In the blink of an eye everything was rendered invisible. The main hall of the shrine, the torii, the ground, the trees, the grass. Absolutely all of it was buried in snakes. Just one thing was barely visible. The figure of Nadeko Sengoku. No, she was more snake than any of them. My field of vision was filled exclusively with snakes. Amidst it all, Nadeko Sengoku still wore her enchanted smile.
We had far transcended anything on the level of gross or scary. This was something else entirely, and while some people might be upset by the comparison, it reminded me of the time I went scuba diving in some ocean somewhere. Yeah, this was a lot like being confronted with a coral reef stretching out before me in all directions. It was overpowering. I found it beautiful.
The mass of white snakes began winding themselves around my body relentlessly, as a matter of course, even slithering out of my clothes. White snakes poured forth from everywhere, from nowhere, until I half expected them to start emerging from my mouth.
I call myself a ghostbuster, fraud and imposter though I may be. And in that capacity I have witnessed many and varied oddities. Urban legends, the word on the street, second-hand gossip. I've had my experiences with them. Senjogahara's ailment had been a part of that, so it's not as if I was completely unprepared for this eventuality. Even without Gain-senpai's warning, Ononoki's worries, or Hanekawa's misgivings, I'd considered what might happen if I failed. Despite my confidence, I am well aware that, in this world, anything can happen. For instance, no matter how flawless my preparations, there was always a chance that someone, be it the person tailing me or anyone else, might interfere. So, it's not as if I wasn't braced for the possibility that Nadeko Sengoku might fly into a frenzy. Deeply skeptical as I am, I'd never be caught with my pants down. Yet her frenzy was so off the charts that any such mental preparation was rendered meaningless. A total whiteout caused by a blizzard of snakes was news to me. I couldn't even determine whether the snakes were real or illusory, and the most terrifying thing about Nadeko Sengoku's frenzy was that she wasn't actually in a frenzy at all. She was in her normal mental state, and had brought all this on without the slightest emotional upheaval. She wasn't even angry about my lies.
Since she'd known from the beginning. Really all lies. Really all lies. Society, the world, this world, it's really, 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 really all lies. Lies, lies, lies.
The innumerable snakes around her leapt danced, in time to her words. Forget the mountain turning into a giant snake, it felt like the horde of them had surpassed the mountain in volume.
I was keenly aware that the strategy, if you could call it one, I'd had in mind, in case of failure, the violent and forceful measures, the crude methods for defeating Nadeko Sengoku had gone up in smoke. Damn, this was bad. A perfect illustration of the expression out of hand. Senjogahara and Hanakawa as well were searching for Oshino like they thought he could take care of any situation, like he was Superman or something. But I don't think he would have been of any use, either. It made sense that Dan-senpai had withdrawn, even though her original plan to install Shinobu Oshino as the serpent deity had gone awry. This girl's animus, her mindset. Maybe it transcended even that of the iron-blooded, hot-blooded, yet cold-blooded vampire kiss-shot Acerolorian Heart Underblade, the legendary vampire whose parameters were supposed to be off every chart.
Really? Such a liar.
Ha! Who you talking to? I spat, snickering. I couldn't believe myself. What a front I was putting up. But even considering that she was a child, that she had only just become a god, Nadeko Sengoku branding me a liar at this late date felt so immature. I couldn't help but snicker and snigger. And what are you talking about? You say that like you've never told a lie yourself. Seriously, you've been deceiving everyone around you all this time. Nadeko Sengoku's smile was unwavering. My words weren't reaching her. And if they couldn't, then no wonder I couldn't fool her. In a sense, she'd been deceiving herself all along. So there was no room for my deception to take root, which is why my last-ditch criticism was so pathetic. Maybe I was the one who was childish, desperately acting cool even as the weight of the snakes blanketing my body threatened to bear me down and crush me. I may be a liar, but you're an even bigger one. Killing the person you love? That's so clearly fucked up. You've pretty much gone full Humpty Dumpty. Finally, I could begin telling it like it was, but that also spelled the end for me. It was the last resort, the final weapon in my arsenal, wielded in desperation, but it might as well have been an instrument of suicide. Stop lying about loving Big Brother Koyomi, about being in love with him. You just hate him, you're just angry at him, aren't you? Don't you loathe and despise him for taking someone else as his lover? For not liking you best of all? Then you should just say so. But instead, because you don't want to be that kind of person, you say you love him. Right. Ultimately, it's not Koyomi you love but yourself. The only thing inside you is narcissism. Only narcissism. Only self-love. Shut up tight inside her solitary world. Which is why neither I, nor Oshino, nor Gan-senpai, nor Araragi could have rescued her. No one could save her. To put it plainly, it's like Oshino's been saying ever since we were at school. People can't save other people. They just go and get saved on their own. As she was, happy and filled to the brim with narcissistic love, not to mention well past the brim with snakes, Nadeko Sengoku had saved herself long ago, and there was no room for anyone else to step in. You could never grant anyone's wish, because no matter how much you play at being a god, even if you really are a god, ultimately you only care about yourself. You believe in nothing and no one but yourself. How could you ever be sensitive to other people's feelings, to their beliefs? What gave me the right to say this? What the hell was I even saying? If I had the time to run off at the mouth, shouldn't I be using it to beg for my life? Whatever action I might take, whatever promise I might make, things were pretty much already over and done with. At a single sign from Nadeko Sengoku, the myriad snakes arrayed across the grounds, disarrayed across the grounds, would sink their fangs into my body, and their poison would run its course. Poison against which even the immortal vampire Koimonogatari Araragi didn't stand a chance. A normal human like me, I didn't even stand half a chance. No, against me, Nadeko Sengoku might not even need to use poison. She could crush the life out of me with nothing more than the weight of the endless horde of snakes endlessly propagating around me. My body was already groaning with the weight of the ones wrapped around my head and shoulders, and I couldn't take much more. I've heard that snakes coil themselves around small animals and crush their bones before swallowing them whole, and that seemed to be pretty much what was happening here. Which is why I should have said something like "forgive me," or "let me off the hook," or "I'm sorry," or "I was wrong." I should have abandoned my pride and dignity as an adult, maybe prostrated myself before her with my forehead to the ground, and sincerely repented for my attempt to deceive her. Ashamed of my insolence, my ignorance, I should have begged her to spare me. "You're foolish and stupid. I thought you were crazy, but you're not. You're just immature and childish. That's all. You're that all-too-common type of pain in the ass who thinks only of herself. Do you think you're special just because you became a god?" But I didn't. Instead, I just hurled more criticism at her. My apotheosis as a contrarian. Why didn't I beg for forgiveness when I clearly should have? Probably because I couldn't forgive Nadeko Sengoku. I couldn't give her a break. Because I didn't want to be spared by someone like her. Never. Not by her.
They hate Nadeko, she said with her smirk intact on her face, confined to her own little world that my words couldn't even begin to reach. They hate cute brats like me. Who said that? Who was it? Big Brother Koyomi?
Araragi would never say that to a younger girl. Even if she was a god, not in a million years. If anyone actually did, it had to be Senjo Gahara. Just as I was grousing at Nadeko Sengoku here in this life-or-death situation, Senjo Gahara had probably turned her acid tongue on the girl. I knew all too well how sharp that tongue could be. Hell, it was none other than myself who had helped her sharpen it, so I understood perfectly. But more than anything, it wasn't about Senjo Gahara's tongue, sharp or acid. Even without the whole Araragi thing, she plain old hate the girl. So I understood perfectly.
But what am I supposed to do? Asked Nadeko Sengoku. Sure, I'm a cute brat, but that's basically not my fault, is it? Even if people hate me, there's nothing I can do about it, is there? I hate this me too, but it's me my own self, so there's nothing I can do about it. I'm not narcissistic. I don't love myself. It's true that I only think about myself, and I only believe in myself, but I hate myself too, Nadeko Sengoku shared. She was giggling weakly the whole time, and it was hard to tell how serious she was being. Still, that self is me, so I have to learn to like it. I have to become someone who can love her own hated self, any kind of self like a god.
I started to say, right. Just to humor her, to be her little yes man. But I couldn't bring myself to do it.
The weight of the snakes all over my body was finally too much for me, and I fell to my knees, with an unpleasant squish, since there were snakes beneath my knees as well.
Wrong. Cut out the pretty excuses. I've heard what happened. It was just happenstance. that you became a god. It's not like you wanted to become one. You didn't put any effort into becoming a god. You didn't become one because it was what you aspired to be. Or am I wrong?
I did not. It wasn't what I aspired to be. No. I mean, that's true, but...
It was a totally random occurrence, or more like a freak accident. So don't act like you put a lot of thought into it or something. Maybe you're happy now, I think you probably are, but it's like you won the lottery on a ticket you bought on a lark. No, not even one you bought, that someone gave you as a present. Ultimately, I said, so close to the final buzzer, continued provoking Nadeko Sengoku. Ultimately, even at this point, even now that you're a god, you're still dancing to someone else's tune, just like you were when you were human. Back then, you were put on a pedestal for being cute, and now you're being put on a pedestal for being a god, but that's the only difference. Back then, you were pampered and spoiled, and now you're venerated and fussed over. That's all. You're a puppet on a string, exactly like you were before, unlike a certain other woman I know.
Nadeko Sengoku frowned at my words for the first time. Or maybe it was a pained smile. Just as she was immature from my perspective, I was probably a stupid pain in the neck from hers. But I went on anyway. I went on.
She refused the salvation offered by a god. She rejected the chance for things to be easy, the chance to be happy. I'd figured she was better off since a god had granted her wish. For the life of me, I couldn't see why she'd try to cure her ailment. In fact, I knew that things would be tougher for her if it was cured. Nevertheless, she chose a life without that god for a crutch. She wished for it. She repudiated anything that might comfort her happenstance, accidents, blaming someone or something. She even resents me for everything that I did for her benefit. Totally different than you, huh? No way they could be compatible. She'd come out and say that she hated Nadeko Sengoku, who in turn would want to kill her. Romantic rivalry aside, Nadeko Sengoku would hate Hitagi Senjogahara enough to want to kill her.
You're probably right. We must be totally different, though. I have no idea who you're talking about. Or why. Still, sometimes, Nadeko Sengoku said it can be someone's fault whether you call it an accident or a twist of fate. In my case, it's absolutely Oji's fault.
Ooh. Ogi? What? Oh, who was that? Was it someone's name? In fact, there was something I didn't understand. Nadeko Sengoku had become a god to escape from the corner she'd been painted into. More or less, but how had she known where to find the god seed that Gain Senpai had entrusted to Araragi? I'd assumed she'd come upon it by chance, and had not prior knowledge of it. But what she just said, could someone have given her a little push in the right direction? Did someone set Nadeko Sengoku up to become a god? Indeed, she'd said, you too, Mr. Kaiki. You'd trick me. You too. So, at some point, someone else tried to deceive Nadeko Sengoku, Araragi, or Senjogahara. Seemed like obvious possibilities, but their behavior couldn't be described as deception. None of the others tried to dupe Nadeko Sengoku either. They simply tried to dote on her. So who? Who deceived Nadeko Sengoku? Who set her up as a god instead of doting on her, this Ogi? Ogi?
Ogi?
I felt as though I'd gotten my hands on an important clue, some vital intel that I ought to pass on to someone. To Gain Senpai, maybe, but I didn't get a chance to think any more about it. I was out of time. I couldn't even stay on my knees any longer, and fell flat on my face. The weight of the snakes was too much for me to keep any part of my body upright. I sank down among them, and it was all I could do just to continue drawing breath.
Well, it's fine though. Or maybe it isn't fine. It's only natural he'd try and resist. But Big Brother Koyomi shouldn't have tried to trick me like this. He shouldn't have lied to me.
Araragi's got nothing to do with it. I squeezed out, in agony from the snakes pressing down on me. It was a highly honest statement, but hardly sincere. since his salvation was unmistakably part of the plan even if he hadn't been the one who put me up to it.
It didn't seem to warrant discussion as far as Nadeko Sengoku is concerned, because she went ahead and declared, "It calls for a penalty. Promises have to be kept, so I'll wait until graduation. But I'll kill a few more. I'll slaughter 5 more people connected to Big Brother Koyomi, right before his eyes."
5 more? I guess that was a hell of a lot better than destroying the entire town as Gain-senpai feared. I'd failed, but we'd get by without suffering worse. I consoled myself with this fact. I was relieved. Even 6 feet under I wouldn't be able to stand, and I told you so. From Gain-senpai or Ononoki, who'd been kind enough to warn me. 5 more, though, apart from myself, presumably about to meet my end then and there, who would be the victims.
Yeah, Suki and Karen are shoo-ins. Suki's my friend, but what can you do? It's her big brother's fault. Then Miss Hanekawa, and though I've never met her, that girl Big Brother Koyomi's always calling his best friend Mayoi Hachikuchi, and I don't want to, I really don't. But maybe Miss Kanbaru.
That'd be more or less who?
If it were 6, Ashino would probably fill out the roster, and if it were 4, Hachikuji might be pulled from the lineup. In other words, that was the extent of it, of Nadeko Sengoku's association with Koyomi Araragi. She acted so stuck on him but actually didn't know much about him.
No chance in hell that Araragi's circle of friends, his connections, was limited to 5 people basically. This middle school girl was just going around saying she loved Araragi without knowing a damn thing about him. That's all there was to her feelings, and that's all there was to their relationship. Sighing, I lay there on the bare earth or on a carpet of snakes and mused about how the world would get off pretty lightly, how maybe it didn't matter if I went down now. In my heart of hearts, I didn't want to beg for my life, it seemed, but respecting that sentiment for what it was and meeting it on its own terms, I might be able to pull through by feigning death or unconsciousness. While I might have tried to deceive Nadeko Sengoku, that was in a sense a foregone conclusion to her, something she'd known from the start. So, she wasn't angry at me. She remained smiling the entire time. Her rage, and the penalty or whatever, were all directed elsewhere, at other people. At Koyomi Araragi and Hitagi Senjogahara. In that case, saying not my problem and calling it quits was just my style, wasn't it? I hadn't been able to dupe Nadeko Sengoku, but I'd just play dead where I lay. And I'd never, seriously never, set foot in the town again. 5 or 7 or 8 people would die, but afterwards the town was stabilized, spiritually speaking, and everyone lived in peace, happily ever after. What a phony, happily. But so what? All tales are out and out lies, so let's take it as it comes, as a comfort. I hadn't accomplished my task. My client, Senjogahara, would be killed, and Suruga Kambaru would get dragged into it and die as well. Each concerned me in its own way, but once some time passed and things calmed down and I started making money again, surely I'd forget about it. I told myself this but couldn't fool myself anymore. My credentials as a swindler had been called into question by my failure to deceive just one middle school girl, and I couldn't even lie to myself anymore. Sengoku. I called Nadeko Sengoku by her name for the first time, by her surname alone, addressing her not as a god, not as a serpent deity, not as a mock, but as a middle school girl. You said you didn't want to become a god, right?
Yeah, and
That you didn't become one because it was what you aspired to be.
I did say that. What about it?
Then, do you want to become a manga artist? Taking an unexpected tack, taking your interlocutor by surprise or unawares, and thereby taking them at their most vulnerable, is a basic conversational technique as practiced by fortune tellers and swindlers. It's called the cold reading. Out of nowhere you ask something like, "You're not feeling well today, are you?" If the mark is feeling even slightly unwell, and there isn't a person alive who can maintain perfect health all the time, they'll think you've hit on the truth and their heart will skip a beat. Even if the mark is feeling perfectly well, you're totally off base, and let's be honest, totally ambiguous question will still make their heart skip a beat. They'll start wondering why you'd say something so off base. Not feeling well? Why would he say that when I'm feeling fine? Am I suffering from some malady that I'm not aware of? That's what they end up thinking, and when they do, they become distracted, which is the same as not thinking, and that creates a weakness to be exploited. But anyone with even a modicum of psychological knowledge will be familiar with this most elementary of techniques, so if the swindler isn't careful about who he uses it on, his true colors will be exposed for all to see. What I pulled on Nadeko Sengoku on Sengoku, though, was no cold reading. I knew that it was the truth. I'd had a glimpse behind the curtain. As proof, Sengoku was neither startled by my words, nor did she think about them.
Mightily distorting that adorable face of hers, turning bright red and opening her eyes wide, she gave full throat to her rage. In that instant, the mound of snakes filling the space between us parted like the Red Sea. She was in absolute command. It was truly the deed of a god. Even the most sympathetic observer, however, could not have called what she did next. Godlike Sengoku ran towards me at full speed, throwing her Ophidian mane into wild disarray. Not a smidgen of the composure or self-possession befitting a deity was in evidence. In fact, she went sprawling 3 full times before she made it to where I lay, crushed nearly to death under the weight of the snakes covering my body, losing her balance on the slippery snow that had melted thanks to all the critters. Nothing in the world could have been more indecent as the contents of her dress were displayed for all the world to see. Sengoku paid that no heed, however, not even bothering to rearrange her disheveled clothing as she sped towards me. When she finally reached me, her staccato scream of rage was accompanied by a punch to my face. Not a slap, not a chop, a tightly clenched fist. It hurt, naturally. But it was the haymaker of an off-balance middle school girl, so a slight turn of the head was all it took to kill its momentum. Without regard for whether or not she had done any damage, however, Sengoku proceeded to punch me in the face again with her other fist. She wasn't in any kind of proper stance. It wasn't even her dominant hand. Nothing. That sort of punch, Dementus.
How do you know that? How do you know that? How do you know that?
What with all the snakes smothering my body, inclining my head was just about the only form of resistance available to me, so it was pretty much an all-you-can-punch buffet. I couldn't dampen the full force of each punch, of course, and the damage accumulated bit by bit, but the same went for Sengoku. When you punch people, your fists also get busted up. In fact, Sengoku was probably taking more damage than I was. She may have been a god. She may have attained divinity, wielding great power and commanding legions of snakes, but she was still a middle school girl. Not exactly battle-hardened. She was weak in hand-to-hand combat. I'd had plenty of time, a full month, to carefully take her measure while we were engaged in cat's cradle, so I'm qualified to make that statement. Then again, she did have a mysterious ailment. Her busted fists would likely heal up soon. But Sengoku was too enraged, too frenzied, too discombobulated to think about turning her power to healing. If she'd used her snakes instead of hitting me directly, if she'd sent her poisonous snakes to assault me, she could have settled things in the blink of an eye. But it seemed she couldn't be satisfied unless she was striking me with her own 2 fists.
Sengoku screamed, shaking her blood-drenched fists. Screamed until her face was crimson.
You saw them. You saw you. Saw you, saw you. Saw you. Saw you. Saw you. Saw you. Saw you.
Yeah, I saw them. Wasn't cold reading, but nor do I have ESP or any other sort of psychic power, so naturally, I wasn't saying that like I'd seen through her as Oshino might have. Unlike his seeing through, there was a trick to how I penetrated her secret. It wasn't that I saw through anything, I just plain saw. I saw them, I said, very conscious of the havoc my own teeth had wrought on the inside of my mouth. I just put in 10 yen and open sesame. Money. Maybe it is everything after all. I laughed to myself, in nihilistic resignation, and in all sincerity.
But I said to never ever open it. Even Big Brother Koyomi was never supposed to see.
They're pretty good, your drawings. Yes, that's what was inside the sealed closet in Sengoku's room. The contents of the closet, which had driven me to break and enter into their home. Not that trespassing is a rarity for me, had been totally useless in deceiving. Or in perceiving. Nadeko Sengoku. Notebooks. Not just one or two, but piles of them. Well, every kid likes to draw some frames in a sketchbook, or a lined notebook and pretend to be a manga artist. Even me, embarrassingly enough. Maybe kids who devote their youth to sports are different, but no kid who likes manga doesn't play at being a manga artist. The initial investment is essentially nil. All you need is a notebook and pencil. A mountain of such notebooks had been crammed into Sengoku's closet. They were worthless. But that's exactly why she didn't want anyone to see them. Someone seeing your creations. For a pubescent child, it was worse than someone reading your diary. If you were still in elementary school, that would be one thing. But still actively doodling all that head-in-the-clouds stuff as a second-year middle schooler. Someone seeing your daydreams, seeing your inner self. It's so shameful you want to die. But my God, the stories. What the hell is up with that nonsensical do-eyed rom-com? Is this the fucking 80s? No such guy has ever existed. It's ridiculous. Not to mention how smutty it gets. And there was so much background and world building, it was overwhelming. Don't you think you're overdoing it a little? If you tightened things up, I think it could have real mass appeal.
I'll kill you, kill you, kill you. You hear me, buddy? I'll kill you and then kill myself.
Sengoku's face steamed with humiliation as she listened to me trampling all over her work, and she hit me again.
Well, well, buddy, eh? Finally treated as an equal. By Nadeko Sengoku. She of the closed-off heart, who shuts out everyone and trusts no one. Killing me won't help. I've got a habit of keeping notebooks as well, you see. There's a fairly detailed record of everything that happened on a given day, so you can kill me, but when those notebooks come to light, your creations will too. This was not at all true. My notebooks are encrypted to a certain degree and can't be easily deciphered. Did you never even stop to think about it? Your parents are bound to open that closet if your whereabouts remain unknown, no matter how much they may dote on you. Do you really think that when they do, they'll burn all the notebooks in there without even looking inside them?
She was struck dumb. The fool really hadn't thought it through.
But, well, if you quit this whole God thing, become human again, and go back to your room right now, you can probably take care of the whole thing, no problem, if you're that ashamed of her.
Are you kidding me, Tilda? Tilda? You think I'm going to give up being a god for such a stupid reason?
Something like that, yeah. My words might not have come out all that clearly since I was getting punched in the face as I spoke, but as long as the message got across. So, tell me, what would make you give up being a god? No matter who I talk to, Senjogahara, Hanekawa, even your parents, no one mentioned this little hobby of yours. No one said a word about it, because no one had any idea. There was no hint of it in any description of you, not anywhere. No foreshadowing, nary an intimation. There were plenty of people who knew that you were sweet on Araragi, but not a single person knew about the contents of your notebooks. Araragi had no idea, and neither did his sisters. That's how stubbornly you kept your shameful little creations secret. My face continued to be battered throughout this monologue. You didn't tell a soul, because it's your true dream. Dream? I hesitated slightly before letting that embarrassing little word roll off my tongue. The second someone like me utters that word, it starts to sound false. But just because it sounds false doesn't necessarily mean it is. 'Cause our true wishes aren't something we tell other people or even gods. Your beloved Fujio Fujiko didn't tell anyone but each other about their dreams of becoming manga artists. That last part was an out-and-out lie. I hadn't the faintest. It was a lie that sounded like a lie. For once, I hated my tongue, lying even at a time like this. You're probably happy as a god. You're probably having fun. Seems like it anyway. I'm not out to drag you off your pedestal, but you didn't actually want to become a god, right? She'd said it was just happenstance, that it was a twist of fate, a freak occurrence like an accident, so even supposing someone intended for it to happen, that someone wasn't her. You must be happy now, but happy, having fun, and nothing more. Waiting around for 6 months, you've ended up with so much time on your hands that you went nuts for Cat's Cradle, okay? What are you going to do once you've killed Araragi and the others? Have nothing but time on your hands. I'll tell you right now, no one's going to come to the shrine. However happy you may be, you'll be nothing more than the steward presiding over its decay. An administrator tasked with keeping this town's peace. That's a raw deal. That's a job for the old. Is a middle school girl in the flower of her youth going to be satisfied with that? You going to start your twilight years before the sun has even come up?
The words raw deal really seemed to hit home, and Sengoku fell silent. She kicked me, silently.
You didn't want to be a god. You didn't want to be happy. You wanted to be a manga artist, yes? Then, why not be one? Ending up in that guise, looking like that. What the hell are you doing, Sengoku?
It seemed like her strength was finally giving out. At long last, Sengoku stopped hitting me, but apparently she hadn't calmed down at all, and she glared at me with bright red bloodshot eyes.
You moron. Those are just doodles. They're crappy and embarrassing. That's why I didn't want anyone to see them. My dream? You're full of it. She wheezed. Those are trash. I wanted to throw them away, but throwing them away would be embarrassing too, so I just hid them in there, that's all.
Don't talk about your own creations that way, Sengoku. I reproved her. There may have been some anger in my voice. Creativity is embarrassing and dreams are embarrassing too. That's just the way it is. Nothing to be done about it. But at the very least, they're not something you yourself ought to demean. And they were really pretty good. I have to be honest, the plot and the setting and the characters didn't do much for an old codger like me, but I know a thing or two about drawing. I mean, like I said, I keep notebooks too, and I make drawings in mine as well. Illustrations. And if nothing else, yours are better than mine. I was flattering her, actually, out of self-interest. I was confident that I was the better artist. But that's precisely why I could say with confidence that Sengoku had some artistic skill of her own. You've got that little thing they call talent.
You don't really mean that, she answered quickly, too quickly. Plus, it's not the kind of thing you can just decide to be.
But it's also not something you'll ever be without trying. Unlike being a god or happy. And as long as you're a god, you'll never make it. You have to be human, I said. You have to be human to make it. My logic was horrendous, if I do say so myself. I was pressing Sengoku to quit being a god, because gods can't become manga artists. What a thing for a grown-up to be telling a kid, while being crushed to death by snakes. As a god, you should have no problem killing Araragi and Senjogahara over this romantic snafu. I'm sure you could carry it off, but is that what you wanted to do? Is that who you wanted to be? It doesn't really matter to you, does it? That's why you told me all about it. You could speak openly because it's not important to you. This was a disingenuous accusation. You could blab just as carelessly about something that's important to you, perhaps to spur yourself on. In fact, when she was making eyes at Araragi, even if it wasn't overboard, she must have tried to back herself into it in such a way, and actually gotten backed into it. That was her dream, after a fashion. and I couldn't deny her that. But then that dream crumbled. It turned into a dream that would never come true, whether she was a human being or a god. But did her other dreams need to die along with it? Sengoku, I love money, because money can stand in for anything. It can be the substitute for anything under the sun. It's a trump card. You can buy things. You can buy life. You can buy people. You can buy hearts. You can buy happiness. You can buy dreams. It's very precious, and yet not irreplaceable. That's why I love it. Come to think of it, I rarely spoke about money that way. The last time I did might have been back in middle school, when I was the same age as Sengoku. Conversely, I do hate irreplaceable things. I can't live without this. I live only for that. I was born for this. Scarcity value really chaps my hide. Does getting termed down by Araragi really make you worthless? Was that your only goal? Was that all you wanted out of life? Listen, Sengoku.
When I paused, Sengoku kicked me. Maybe hearing Aragi's name used like that had enraged her further. She seemed to have realized that kicking me wouldn't hurt her fists, and maybe that was a good sign. At least it meant that I'd brought her back down to earth, enough for her to have that realization anyway. The proof was that she only kicked me once, no follow-up barrage.
Listen, Sengoku, I reprised. A certain fool is taking care of the tiresome task of dating Araragi for you. So put him in the rearview mirror and find your own tiresome task. You probably have all kinds of other things you want to try, things you want to do. Or you did, right?
Things I want to try, things I want to do.
Was it so painful that you just abandoned everything? Really? Was there no high school whose uniform you wanted to wear? No monthly magazine whose new issue you wanted to read? No new season of a TV show or new movie that you were excited about? Sengoku, was everything other than Araragi just irrelevant bullshit to you? Didn't you love your parents, those good law-abiding citizens? Was everything other than Araragi just trash in your internal top 10?
No.
Then why? Why does Araragi get such special treatment? Is he your avatar or something?
What would you know, Mr. Kaiki?
After taking a good long wind-up, focusing on her target like she was getting ready for a penalty kick, Sengoku kicked me in the face as I lay on the ground. Turning my head a little bit wasn't enough to mitigate the damage from an attack of that ferocity. Kicks like that could be the end of me.
You don't know a thing about me, Mr. Kaiki.
I've done some poking around, but you're right. I don't know anything, nothing important, anyway. You're the only one who knows anything about you, which is why you're the only one who can value you. And I went on. At this point, anything I said might be my famous last words. A bunch of my teeth were broken. False teeth are really expensive. Shit. And you're the only one who can make your dreams come true.
That didn't work, so let's try this instead. You think that kind of half-assed approach is acceptable? For human beings? Sengoku asked.
My answer was somewhat garbled by the blood I spat out along with it. Of course it is. We're only human, after all. Nothing is irreplaceable. Nothing is immutable. For this girl I know. This girl I know intimately. Her current love is always her first love. She acts as if she's never really fallen for anyone before. And that's the way it should be. Anything else would be no good. There's no such thing as a one true love or an irreplaceable thing. Human beings, because they're human beings, can always try again. They can always buy it again. So for now, I tuned my eyes towards the main hall of the shrine.
And that's when I realized that the hordes of snakes had disappeared. The snakes I was sure were atop my body, pressing me down, were gone. It was just that I was so grievously injured that I couldn't move a muscle, couldn't get up on my own. I realized that I was at a perfectly normal shrine, a brand new building on lonely grounds. The hordes of snakes had plowed clear the snow, however, and it felt like spring had arrived. Just here, I looked at the offertory box in front of the main hall.
Go buy some real art supplies with the money I gave you.
300,000 yen should be enough to get you one of everything.
I'm telling you, I've never even thought about becoming a manga artist. Not to mention, I'm a god now, even if I never aspired to be one, and it just seems like a waste to ditch my good fortune.
I couldn't argue with that. It's not like people have to become what they aspire to be.
But Sengoku may have been about to kick me again at that point. She may even have been about to punch me again. Yet she did neither. She just kicked the air like she was over the whole thing and clenched her fist defiantly. There was a manga artist that they called a god. It wouldn't be a waste if I end up like him, she said, dared to say.
Now, that was an impossible dream. But everyone has the right to dream as big as they want. Every person has the right. And I'm sure you can do it. If you don't believe me, you'll just have to try it and see for yourself. If you don't believe me, coming from someone who made his living as a swindler, what turned out to be my last words to Sengoku were painfully cliché. Breathtakingly so.
Okay, I'll fall for it, and chuckled ruefully.
What kind of creep laughs when she knows she's being lied to? Who cares? Hitagi Senjogahara had commissioned me to deceive Nadeko Sengoku, and I had pulled it off even if things had gone just a tiny bit differently than I had planned. No, maybe I had failed miserably.
I extended my right arm, which felt like it had been fractured under the weight of the snakes, and with my index finger I poked Sengoku in the forehead. You, little scamp! Sengoku Kaiki? Just at that moment, Koimonogatari appeared in his civvies. It was good timing. The best timing, perfect even.
If he'd come a little earlier, the hordes of snakes might have gone ahead and slain Araragi, while if he'd come any later, I wouldn't have known what to do with the collapsed and unconscious Sengoku. If I left her, she might freeze to death, but I suspected some of my bones were broken, and in that state, I wasn't at all confident that I could carry her down that snowy mountain path by myself. So in that sense, I was grateful for the arrival of the charming prince. Nice of you to drop in. But dropping in like that, in the middle of exam prep, with his secondary exams looming, had he had a premonition or something? Man, defenders of justice have excellent intuition. Not that he'd ever been the kind of guy who'd put his exam prep before a middle school girl.
Kaiki, what the hell are you doing here? What have you done to Sengoku? He shouted at me in utter consternation.
What to do? I was thoroughly exhausted, so I considered just laying it all out, telling him that thanks to Senjogahara's request, I'd been in the throes of battle with Sengoku until a moment ago. If, as a result, things went sour between Senjogahara and Araragi, and they broke up, what did I care? I thought, but instead, I lied effortlessly. Gon-senpai asked me to come. I was exorcising this young lady. I'm here this time as a ghostbuster, not a swindler. I know it's against the rules for me to be here at all. But you can give me a pass, since I'm not here as a swindler, right? This brazen mouth of mine sure comes in handy. Given that I was there as a swindler and nothing but same way I live my life. Excepting the last 5 minutes or so.
Miss Gain.
Hearing that didn't seem to quell his confusion, but at least the situation started to make some kind of sense to him. From my perspective, it was an unthinkable prospect, any way you sliced it, but the explanation, Izuku Gain is acting to put the situation to rights, seemed to be relatively convincing for Araragi. Damn Gain-senpai and Oshino, always pretending to be righteous in front of these children. Something I will absolutely never do.
But Araragi cast his gaze down to my feet, where the unconscious Sengoku lay, and repeated, "What the hell have you done to Sengoku?"
It seemed he was letting the fact that I'd broken my promise slide for the moment and accepting the explanation that Gain-senpai was behind my presence. I'd broken my promise before as far as he knew, so maybe he felt like that ship had already sailed. The same thing I did to your sister, I said bluntly.
The same thing you did to Karen.
Yes, though this time it's not a bee. A killer bee was appropriate for your sister, but for Sengoku for Nadeko Sengoku, I corrected, having inadvertently used the more familiar mode of address. It's a slug. In a three-way deadlock between a slug, a frog, and a snake, the slug beats the snake, hence slug tofu. Then again, given that it's a fake aberration I cooked up, as is my style, it doesn't have the power to seal away a serpent god on its own. If Nadeko Sengoku hadn't been inclined to accept the slimy little guy, it never could have contended with the snake.
Been inclined to accept. Kaiki, what have you done to Sengoku? Araragi started to say, but apparently he thought better of it. Maybe he realized that he was beating that particular question into the ground, and in its place he asked, "Did you say to her?"
The usual, I answered, ignoring Araragi and leaning over Sengoku. The job was nearly complete, and I didn't want any kid interfering at this point. I said the usual. Love isn't everything. There are other things to look forward to in life. Don't throw away your future. Everyone's youth is embarrassing. Someday you'll look back on this and laugh. All the usual stuff that adults say to children. What have I done to Sengoku? Just the usual.
So saying, I stuck my hand into her mouth, and gritting my teeth, thrust it in all the way to the elbow, so deep that I was a little worried her jaw might come off. Keiki, what are you doing?
Shut up already. Stay out of it, Araragi. Know that there's nothing you can do for her.
I started feeling around inside Sengoku's body, and once my fingers held the thing I was searching for, I quickly pulled my arm free, and her little mouth closed back up normally. And simultaneously, Sengoku's stark white hair, that full head of whitesnake hair, turned jet black, which is to say, went back to normal. From the aspect of an exalted serpent deity to that of a run-of-the-mill middle school girl, now that her hair wasn't made of snakes anymore, I got the strong sense that, unlike in the pictures I'd seen in the album, her bangs were awfully short, too short, but maybe that was just my imagination, and the white dress that oddly resembled a sacred vestment also turned back into a commonplace middle school uniform.
3 months ago, that must have been what she looked like right before she became a god. She was back to her old self. Sengoku was back. Araragi must have recognized this too, and it seemed to reassure him.
I displayed the talisman that was clutched in the hand I'd thrust down Sengoku's throat. The talisman of a snake. The talisman of the corpse of an autophagus serpent. It was dripping with saliva or gastric juices with bodily fluids anyway, almost like a slug had been crawling all over it. But either way, this was without a doubt the talisman that had bestowed divinity on Sengoku. Might as well make sure though.
Is this the talisman Gan-senpai entrusted to you?
Yeah, it is.
I see, I said, wondering what to do with it. My honest feeling was that it would fetch a hefty price, and I didn't think Sengoku or Araragi could blame me if I just pocketed it. But the thing had come from Gan-senpai. Better to let sleeping gods lie. Or a snake in the grass is worth leaving in the goddamn bush. Here, I pushed the talisman on Araragi, acting for all the world like I was doing him a favor. Then I wiped my slimy hand on his shirt. This time, don't mistake who to use it on.
I'm not gonna, Araragi declared. I'm not using this thing.
The same determination that started the whole mess. This guy never learned his lesson. Not like it was for me to say.
Shrugging my shoulders, I walked past him, striding brazenly down the center of the path. When I was about to pass under the torii, hey, wait a sec. Kaiki, where do you think you're going?
Noah, to do nothing. I'm not even supposed to be in this town. If she finds out I was here, Senjogahara will kill me. It wasn't that I wanted to cover for her. I was just using her as a clever excuse to make my exit. I've done my job and made good money. I walked off without looking back. Get that kid home safe, Araragi. I made it sound cool, but basically I was just sticking him with the extremely dicey job of accompanying a missing girl on her return home. Well, I couldn't deny a prominent role to a guy who'd showed up conveniently at the 11th hour. But be sure the girl never finds out it was you who brought her home.
What?
If she thinks you're the one who saved her, you'll be right back where you started. After all my hard work, exorcising the spirit that possessed her. Though that was just happenstance. The slug tofu will leave of its own accord after 3 days, no lingering issues. If it absolutely won't leave, throw some salt on her, and then never interact with that girl again for the rest of your life. Got it? Become nothing but a memory to her.
You really think I could be that irresponsible? It's my fault that this happened to Sengoku, so it's my responsibility to BICSOF.
Do you really not get it? Ridiculous. Why was I stuck doing all this preachy crap? I'm even less suited to it than Gein-senpai or Oshino, but it had to be said. I had to say it.
You cannot do a damn thing for that girl. With you around, that girl is just going to go to shit. Sometimes love makes people stronger, and sometimes it makes them go to shit thanks to you. Senjogahara has gotten a little stronger. But with you around, Nadeko Sengoku will just go to shit. I wonder what Araragi's expression was at that moment. How did it feel, getting an earful from a guy like me? I imagined that, he might kill himself over it. Although I'd managed to conceal the fact that Senjogahara had instigated the whole thing, there was no hiding anymore that I'd rectified Araragi's blunder. He probably even felt embarrassed. Well, when was youth ever not embarrassing? But I'd give him a little follow-up on the house. Senjogahara went to shit because of me, and you made her stronger. This time around, I happened to be the right man for the job. Or maybe I was paying back that debt.
Kaiki, but Araragi didn't finish his sentence. That was the extent of his protest.
I doubt he was convinced, but he had the good sense to leave well enough alone.
Then, as if in place, he asked, "You think that if I'm not around, Sengoku can be happy?"
I wonder. She seemed happy until just now, but being happy isn't the point of life. Even if you can't be happy, you can, say, become what you aspire to be. I answered offhand, but either way, I continued offhand. Life's got its bright spots, don't you think?
See you around. The more I said that we'd never meet again, or that I'd never set foot in this town again, the more I seemed to get drawn back here. I decided to be contrary, and tried that instead, then passed under the torii and down the steps. My entire body was groaning with pain, but of course I didn't let on.
I don't know anything about any epilogue to this story, nor do I have a clue how things shook out. Why should I? Nothing to do with me.
I left Sengoku and Araragi behind and descended the mountain, then called Senjogahara. I told her straight out, with a few embellishments, that the job had gone off without a hitch, but that Araragi had found out about it. The first part aside, she was pissed about the second part. It wasn't a charming kind of pissed like blowing her top. She was so agitated that she went into hysterics.
I felt bad, but refreshed at the same time, like it served her right. So it was really very emotionally complicated for me. But then again, this was the last time I would hear her voice, a parting auditory glimpse, so perhaps I felt more refreshed than anything. Well, I did the minimum to cover it up. Now the rest is up to you. Old soldiers simply fade away, and the children inherit the earth.
You screwed up royally, so spare me the meaningless posturing. I don't know if there's such a thing as hysteria fatigue, but having thoroughly exhausted herself through her wild ravings, thank you. You saved us. Senjogahara finally said for the record she'd become a lot less difficult even just over the last month. So I guess this is it.
Guess so. Now we're done with each other. The end.
Bye-bye.
Okay then.
Neither of us spoke with any real feeling. There wasn't even the awkwardness you feel when you pass an old acquaintance on the street. There was absolutely nothing between us. Well, I say us. But maybe it wasn't as true for Senjogahara as it was for me, because she wasn't done.
Hey, Kaiki? Can I ask you one thing?
Well, no good at goodbyes. Still a child after all. No.
Back then, 2 years ago, Do you really think I was in love with you?
How the fuck should I know? I thought, and considered hanging up, but as always, my mouth had other ideas. I did, yeah.
I see, came her rejoinder. Someone got duped. By me.
Right. What of it?
Nothing. That's it. Just watch out for wicked women from now on.
I will. And you don't forget to sign your letters. I hung up, feeling like I'd gotten the last laugh. I was shocked at my own pettiness. There was nothing to it. Figuring out that Hitagi Senjogahara was the one who'd put the letter in my hotel room was nothing to write home about. It would have been one thing if I'd realized immediately, but it had taken ages. When I summoned her to the shopping district, it gave her an idea where I was staying. All that was left was for her to call and tell the concierge in an adorable, childish voice, "I have something for a guest of yours, a Mr. Kaiki," like it was the most natural thing in the world there were any number of hotels in the area, including the one where Hanekawa was staying, and no harm done if I wasn't there. I would never find out, at any rate. And the show she put on of deducing how the letter had been slipped into the room must have been intended to eliminate her from the list of possible suspects. No wonder she was pissed when I told her I'd torn up the letter. She'd written it. So why did she give me the contradictory order to withdraw when she had commissioned me for the job? Because she knew me all too well. Hitagi Senjogahara knew perfectly well that if someone told me to withdraw, I'd become more stubborn about finishing the job. In fact, if Ononoki had taken the opposite approach, if Gan-senpai's warning had been not to withdraw, I might have then and there. Which is why Senjogahara contacted me to do something, and the opposite as well. A stupid, childish ploy. Not that I hadn't gone along for the ride even as I'd known. I turned off my cell phone, then immediately smashed it okay. The phone itself was pretty pricey, so it was just the SIM card that I smashed. And thus the cord tying me to Senjogahara was cut. She could probably find out my new number if she tried, of course. She'd done it before. But from here on out there'd be no reason for her to contact me. None at all. I deleted Senjogahara's number, and only hers, from the empty cell phone, then headed to the station. I had to retrieve the suitcase I'd left in a coin locker there. That was evidence, not quite Sengoku's closet, but it had to be properly disposed of. Be that as it may. As I trudged along the snowy February street, I wondered, forget Senjogahara, how much of this was actually premeditated by Gain-senpai. Because Senjogahara wasn't the only one who knew me well enough to know that if I were told to withdraw, I would do the opposite. Was the 3 million yen actually just an attempt to fund my endeavor? Had I been dancing to Gain-senpai's tune all along? Well, nothing to be gained by pondering such things. Dancing to her tune was a small price to pay to be free of my ties to her. But had she really disowned me? She might appear before me the very next day, as if nothing had happened. But I'd cross that bridge when I came to it. If she brought an offer of money to be made, I wouldn't refuse to play my old role as her junior. Nevertheless, I thought, Gaien-senpai's unsentimental and practical attitude was one thing, and Keigenui's lack of involvement was only to be expected. But where the hell was Oshino in all this? He was every inch the vagabond. A rootless vagabond like me, though even more dissolute, which made getting a grasp on his whereabouts harder than grasping a cloud. And yet, that chump who loved to look cool in front of kids, did he really skip out when so many of his former charges had their backs against the wall? Did he really leave them hanging like that? With Araragi and Senjogahara and the former Kishot and Hanekawa, and a bunch of other people in such dire straits, wouldn't he come riding in on his white horse, like never before? I'd gotten dragged into the mess because he hadn't shown up, but by all rights, saving Sengoku, saving Araragi and the others, should have been Mimoshino's job, not mine. Where was he now, and what the hell was he doing? It bugged me. Well, it didn't, but looking into it might prove profitable. Maybe I should search for my fellow vagabond. It had been a long time since we'd had a drink together, and it was an appealing prospect.
Just as I came to that decision, I saw stars. I toppled forward onto the snowy road, clueless as to why. I was quivering like jelly. Did my body finally reach its physical limit after being crushed by the snakes? But the snow before my eyes was dyed crimson, and I gathered that I'd been struck hard on the back of the head. Forcing myself to turn my blood-stained head, I beheld a lone middle school-age kid standing there holding an iron pipe. The pipe was also stained with blood, so apparently that's what I'd been struck with. It was a terribly long pipe, and the centrifugal force must have been something.
And Miss Ogi was right. You really came back, Yukon man, muttered the middle schooler, staring at me with eyes devoid of even a glimmer of sanity. Thanks to you, thanks to you, thanks to you, thanks to you.
At first, I didn't recognize the kid, but as I gazed at that face and those bloodshot eyes, it came to me. I couldn't recall a name, but... Right, it was one of the many middle schoolers I'd hoodwinked last time I was in town. One of the faces I'd drawn in my notebook on the plane ride from Okinawa, and behind the kid there loomed a snake. Not strictly behind, more like around. A giant snake, coiled round, enwrapping the kid's body. It wasn't some vague phantom, but clearly visible. What the hell? Did the kid get counter-cursed or something? Was this kid the one who'd started everything by putting that charm on Sengoku? And by the way, after solving the mystery of the letter, I'd lumped it in as Senjogahara's doing, but the identity of my tale was, strictly speaking, still unknown. If it wasn't Senjogahara, then I assumed it was Gain-senpai's watchdog. Yet if everything was proceeding according to plan for her, why would she put me under surveillance? So had this kid been the one tailing me? No, I turned it over in my blood-soaked head and judged that it must have been someone else. This kid didn't possess the requisite sanity to tail someone. Wait, had I heard a name a second ago? Ogi? Who is that? The name rang a bell, like I'd heard it somewhere before. But that was as far as I got.
The crazed middle schooler shrieked with rage and brandished the iron pipe at my prone figure, and, with the next hatred, spite, and curse-filled blow, I slipped away into unconsciousness.
They say that even in hell money talks. As someone with no savings to speak of, I thanked my lucky stars that I'd picked up some change there before the end.
Trepidation when different viewpoints cast the same people and events in an entirely different light. Hey buddy, this is totally different from what you wrote before. It's surprises like these that keep me writing novels. At any rate, this book completes the publication of every installment of the Monogatari series announced thus far. The schedule was insane, but I was able to pull it off thanks to assistance from many quarters. I'll never make such incautious promises in the future again. Beware. Oops. I swear. There we go. A novel written 100% in bad taste. This was Koimonogatari, Chapter Romance, Hitagi End. Senjogahara once again graces the cover of this book, which, as it turns out, marks a triumphant return 5 years in the making. Crazy, right? VOF Anne has been kind enough to depict Senjogahara amid the snow for us. I've caused all kinds of trouble schedule-wise for the editors at Kodansha Box, but this is the last time, so please find it in your hearts to forgive me. And I want to offer my deepest gratitude to all the readers who have accompanied me on the fly-by-night journey through this second season. Thank you so much. There's a preview of the final season after the colophon, so stick around for that.
This, as well as a time frame, is in reference to the original edition's cover art, which has been included as a color insert. The copyright page is inserted at the end in Japanese books. The ads that follow in this edition are not for the final season, but rest assured that the series will continue to appear in translation.